everyone. Welcome. This is the Beau Is Afraid spoiler discussion. I wanted everyone to kind of have a few, I guess it's been out for, 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks since we saw it. I didn't want to necessarily throw this out on YouTube without people seeing it because I still think that this film should be seen blindly. And if you are in this community and you're friends with us and you haven't seen the film and you want to see the film, I'm not going to feel bad if you decide to not watch this and save it till like you eventually watch it, the film, and then do a replay on this. But I'm very excited to have a discussion with all of these amazing YouTubers. They are so fantastic, and they bring so much to the table in streams. And I guess we're going to do like a generic say hi to everyone and their initial thoughts on the film, and then we'll do a little bit more of a deep dive into Ari Aster's latest film. So I guess I will start here with Vin, Hard Copy Blues. How are you doing?
Oh, good. So it should be a fun stream.
Yes.
So this film is obviously very divisive. I feel like you're either going to love it or hate it. You're going to have the group of people that hate it and say it's just a self-indulgent, overblown mess of a film with no real story. And then you're going to have the other side of the fence where people just love the creativity. They love the symbolism. They love the runtime. They love everything about it. And I'm excited for this stream because right now I feel like there's a fence and you're on one side or the other, and I'm walking on top of that fence and I could fall either way. So I'm hoping to get a better grasp based on everyone else's thoughts and kind of find where I stand on it a bit better.
Cool.
Great. Hi, Tyler. Welcome. This is Tyler Wolf. He did a great video that was actually kind of like a reenactment / review on his YouTube channel, and I was laughing so much. I highly recommend everyone checks it out. It was hilarious. Yeah,
that was a great video. Even if you haven't seen the movie, if you're in the chat, check that video out.
I was when I got that recorded message from Film Girl, I just could not believe the reaction I got out of her because, like, I've never gotten a response like that. It still hits hard just hearing that.
I was dying, so it's so funny.
Well, that is good to know. I'm glad that I'm doing something right, but reenacting the movie to give people the sense of the style and the structure of a movie is kind of just become my shtick at this point. And when it comes to Beau Is Afraid, I was cautiously excited because Ari Aster is a hit and miss director for me, but having seen it with my best friend in IMAX theater all by ourselves for the 3-hour runtime, which is great because with A24 horror movies, audience members are just the fucking dumbest. But my best friend was on that one side of the fence Finn was talking about where he fucking hated not every second of it, but it just left a sour note on him. But I fucking loved just about every second of it. And my overall reaction is that it kind of has.
It'll come back.
What's up?
No, sorry. I don't know if we froze or if everyone froze. Maybe we just froze. I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I saw you freeze for a second, but like it was no big deal. But
okay, great, perfect.
I love how it's more a tragic comedy than anything else. Like it's hard to define it by any other genre, even though like there's a mishmash of other stuff. I love that. I think Joaquin Phoenix was great as always. I like the supporting cast for the most part. There were a couple actors I felt could have been in it more or less, but the overall surrealist style. Surrealist movies are hit and miss for obvious reasons. They're not easy to define, but I love the balance that Ari Aster puts into this. And in my opinion, this is like my favorite of the 3 that he's made so far.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess we'll go this way. So I guess we'll go with Mark next.
Oh man, so many thoughts running through my head right now. One of you will say something, and I want to like add on to it. I saw this movie by myself at a 9:40 p.m. showing, and I didn't leave my theater till like 1 a.m. And that alone, because I always sit in the very back, and it was kind of just added to the experience in a way. Because I'm like, I keep wondering, like, I'm like, is there someone down there, like in the front row? It's like, kind of freaked me out a little bit. Because I don't like to have people behind me, but that's besides the point. And the other thing that was interesting about that was the fact that I didn't have other people influencing how I reacted to things. And I don't know if that's good or bad, really. Like, would I have enjoyed it more with the crowd? Depends on the crowd, right? So I was laughing at points, and I know that it was because I found it funny and not because other people were kind of laughing too. But yeah, no, I sat with this on. It was a long, quiet drive home. I'm like thinking about it, and it was very contemplative. And it's we're gonna get into it. We're gonna chop it up about this movie. But yeah, initial reaction is good. I did like it, and it's not the type of movie that like is so easy. You can't just say like. I feel like putting a number grade or a letter grade on a movie like this is so like reductive. Like it doesn't add much to the conversation. And it's one of those rare and important movies that it doesn't necessarily like the quality is not measured by how much you actually enjoyed watching it. Because there are points in the 3-hour runtime where I was like, I'm not enjoying this right now. But I don't know that I was supposed to be. So anyway, we'll get into all of that, I'm sure. But yeah. Lots to say about
yeah,
this.
no, I agree with that a lot. And it is interesting, the audience that you were with. And we felt, yes, there's a lot of dark comedy in it, but there were times where people were kind of like overly laughing. And I think it's because the film made them so uncomfortable and they didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, they're trying to like correct it.
Like, so no, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Someone that was sitting next to him, like she just was laughing for like, what was it, 75% of the movie, but it was like nonstop and it was really loud and it was very bizarre.
Beyond
so like she's just trying to like get it or something.
They didn't know how to process what they were seeing, so they just like nervous laugh.
Yes.
Reaction.
Which is part of anxiety, which is one of the motifs.
Yes.
I would love Caprice to take it on next.
Like I was telling you guys backstage, I saw this movie twice already. First time was, I just didn't know what to think. So I had to go back a second. I feel like this movie is definitely, like Vin said, it's either going to be one of those things people love or that there's really no in between with this movie. It's either a greatest movie of all time type of thing, or it's the worst movie Ari Aster has ever made. There's no, it's okay. Like there's none of there's none of that. The first time I saw it, I was actually in a packed theater. And it was like you said, Tracy, there was people laughing at really random parts where I was kind of like, are you just as uncomfortable as me? Or do you actually find that funny? Like I couldn't decipher the fact I was kind of distracted along with everybody else because there were people in the theater actually going to people next to them, asking them if they even knew what was going on. The second time I was like Mark, but instead of being 9 o'clock at night, it was actually 10 a.m. in the morning. Oh, wow. And there was nobody in my theater. I was the only one with the actual theater crew. And I looked behind me and the theater crew was actually sitting and watching this movie all the way in the back. And so it was one of those things where I kind of was able to take it all in more on the second try. So I do recommend that if you are going to go see this movie and you haven't seen it already, I would recommend going by yourself, or at least with people who you know are going to be quiet and take it all in and then talk after. Because if you miss one little thing, everything else is not going to make sense. Yeah. And that's already a problem. So don't get stuck in that boat. But I do want to say that I actually am on the part of where I actually really love this movie. So that's where I'm at with it. And I'm actually really excited to talk about it because I haven't been able to talk to anybody about it yet. So,
well, we're so happy to have you join us. And yeah, that's great recommending to anyone that is looking to see this film. But I'm going to say this one more time. If people just joined, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to be heartbroken if you're not in the chat, if you're not watching, and you want to see it. Because again, go in blind. There's a lot of surprises. And this is a spoiler discussion. So, and then finally, we do have Fritzky. How are you doing this evening? Oh, we can't hear you. Do you have your mic on? Nope.
Try one more time.
That's okay. Take your time. We've all been there. I've been there many times. Okay, so I'm going to give him some time because he's probably just making little adjustments here.
Technical difficulties.
In the meantime, I wanted to briefly say the quote that Nathan Lane said about this film, which was, he said, "This movie is everything, everywhere, all at once for Jews." And that's kind of like the most hilarious quote ever, because it's like everything everywhere all at once is concerning a mother and daughter, and like all this crazy stuff are they're all metaphors for that type of relationship. And this is between a son and a mother, and much more bizarre, I would say. If you could even say like a movie is more bizarre than Everything Everywhere All at Once, but this one is. I personally agree. Caprice, I definitely think I need to. I'm looking forward to the rewatch because there is so much to discuss and so many.
I can't wait.
Right, like let's ask you. Well, what about your thoughts here? Because I feel like I asked everyone, and you can give your opinion on this as well.
I feel like it was worth its run time. Like about 15 minutes ago, we were just talking about The Irishman, and I appreciate movies that if they tell the story of a man or a woman, the life story, it should be a long movie.
And we disagree on that one. I thought The Irishman was too long, but that's
Thank
okay.
Thank you.
In this case, it deserves this 3-hour runtime because you see, even on the poster, you see like 4 versions of him throughout his life, and maybe there's a 4-hour cut I hear.
I don't know about a 4-hour cut, but maybe you're right about that.
Originally,
it is obviously a very personal story, and this makes sense for someone to kind of have as long of a runtime as they want, I guess. And I think I even said in my review, I thought the pacing was really fantastic, and I was actually on edge the entire time. And I honestly, just towards the end, like around 15 minutes left, I was kind of like, I'm ready to leave. But I think that's also because it does make you feel anxious and like freaked out for a while.
Get out of here.
Yes. So I guess since we're waiting on Fritzky, let's see here. I guess we can talk about Act 1. So yes, I wanted to say this as well. I kind of consider this movie a 4-act film with an epilogue, and initially I had said to Max that I thought it was kind of like a 5-act film, and then he made me recognize that it is closer to, it's like a 4-act film with an epilogue. I know that the 4-act format is not common, but it is a thing that is used sometimes. And I think that even if you agree or disagree, it's kind of like the better way to discuss this film. So I will say, so the first part is essentially we meet Beau. It's his crazy neighborhood. It's him living alone in his apartment. There are signs that say there's a brown recluse in the building. There's a lot going on. And him talking to his therapist in the beginning of the film. There is a lot to, I feel like that you could take to appreciate the rest of the film even more if you watch the first part a second time. And once we get to Caprice on this, I would love to know that, because I only saw this film once. And I would love to know what your perspective was on the opening regarding to moving forward with the film, taking it in a second time. So Vin, I would love to hear your thoughts on the first act, the whole setup to who he is, and the interactions over the phone with his mom, like anything you want to talk about really to discuss it.
Just side note, I think Alex messaged in the private chat he's ready to come back.
Oh,
he did.
Oh my God. Okay, so then we'll let him give his hi. I'm so sorry.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. I'm like I said, I'm not in my normal setup, so sorry about the difficulties.
He's a film student, and he's working on his short film, and so he normally has a different setup, but his house he said is like a mess right now.
That's the biggest lesson I learned about shooting a film at your house. You will rip the interior of your home apart. Furniture will be everywhere. But we found a spot.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually, so we're gonna cut to you real quick, and you can give us your thoughts on the movie as a whole, and then I will go to the chat, and then we will get into Vin's opinion of the first act of the film.
Yes.
So Fritzky, Alex, what general thoughts, observations of the film?
Okay, so I'll try to make it somewhat brief since I know you guys were kind of getting ready to move on. So I guess a little bit about me and Ari Aster in general. Yeah, Hereditary is one of the most influential movies when it comes to my life personally, especially seeing it as young as I did. I mean, that's not saying much because I was only 2018, I think it was. But yeah, when I first saw Hereditary, I think I was a junior in high school at the time. Sounds about right. And yeah, I remember that film just for 2 weeks straight just could not leave my mind for the life of me. I think, I don't know, it just knocked me out of the park and like honestly redefined not just horror movies, but filmmaking in general for me. Midsummer, it took a while for me to really grow on it, specifically with the pacing. But once, I gave it some time, yeah, now those are two of my absolute favorite films of all time. Hereditary is in my top 10. So all being said and done, Beau Is Afraid is a movie that definitely was in the top 3 for sure of my most anticipated of the year. Did not disappoint whatsoever. It's probably of the 3 my least favorite, but even then I still gave it a 4.5. So, that's not, I don't think that's really saying too much, to be honest.
No.
There was one minor thing that kind of irritated me a little bit about it, which we're not even going to address till the very end because I know we're kind of doing this in segments. So I'm going to keep that as a surprise until the very end. But on top of that, fantastic movie. Definitely behind John Wick 4, my favorite of the year so far.
Very nice.
Sick.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much for that insight.
Right, let's head to the chat.
And I will say, I also, I said this in my review too. I really think that if you've watched Ari Aster's prior films, it's a lot easier to take in the film instead of maybe like never seeing his work. Like you have a little bit more of like, oh, you know what you're getting yourself into because they're so, out there. So for the most part,
It is out there.
yeah. And I love all of his films. So, okay. So we're going to start here. Do a little chat. We have Kim Lehman. Aw, hey Caprice.
Hey, baby.
Raise on Popcorn with Grant. What's up?
Grant, what is up, Grant?
Yeah, he just celebrated 300
What's
subscribers.
That's awesome.
I'm really sorry I didn't join that stream, by the way. I was at school last night filming a director's statement. Uh-oh, I just dropped my water. Ah.
Well, I think he'll forgive you. Philosopher King, hello, y'all.
What's up?
We have Luke Ponto. Luke was on that stream last night celebrating Grant. What's going on, guys? Hope
What
all
up,
is
Luke?
well. Dude who loves movies. Cody, what's up, everyone? Don't forget to roundhouse kick that like button. Absolutely.
like.
Thank you.
Has he seen Star Wars yet?
No.
Not seen the movie yet.
Let's see. Here we are. Oh, I have not seen this movie yet. Well, Cody, don't feel obligated to watch this stream if you want to hold off and replay this after you see it.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, it's all spoilers tonight, and I'm happy we can address that. Oh my God, yes.
I will
We'll
never
get into that.
Speaking of spoilers.
We will absolutely get into that Mariah Carey song.
Oh my God.
We
I
will
was
all
listening to
never-
it on my drive home. It was like bizarre. It was in my head. I couldn't get it out. I had to.
Apropos.
Kim Lehman, hey Caprice. I got to the chat a little late to start with, so I apologize. This is my first time with a panel, so
Bear with us.
perfect. Hey Kim. Sup Cody. See, like my fellow streamers are helping me out here. They're like responding because they're like, she's not mentioning anyone in the stream yet. Philosopher King, this film did not work for me. Well, it's a very polarizing film, so I don't blame you. I actually personally loved it, but I understand where people are coming from.
Good to be controversial.
Yes. Vin, yes, hello. But I did like the first act or so of the film. Yeah. And I think that's what also I personally feel I'm glad that A24 makes movies like this because all we're getting really is just, sequels and prequels and remakes.
I have strong thoughts on that.
Yeah, cool.
So whenever there's an opportunity, I would love to.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, actually, if you want to speak on that right now, that's fine.
Let's get through the first act first, because I know we were gonna have Vince start us off. But yeah, I definitely want to talk about that at some point.
Cool.
Yes, and it's funny because it's not a traditional film, so it's kind of like a non-traditional stream where we kind of figure out what.
Yeah, like I don't know that there's a right way to do this outside of the acts just going chronological, but like random thoughts as we have them, we should
yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Awesome DuckTales shirt, Tyler. Yes.
It's hard to show the entire thing, but my sister actually made this shirt for my birthday a month and a half ago.
Really?
How is the new DuckTales show? Because I used to love the old one. I never saw the new one.
See, here's the thing. I didn't actually watch the original show as a kid. Like, the Disney afternoon stuff was never on when I was at the house, unless it was Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, and that was only like once or twice. But I personally love the show. You don't have to have seen the 80s one to enjoy the brand new one, which is such a relief personally. I even have 2 of the characters tattooed on each of my arms, which I got my last time at the Toronto Film Festival, oddly enough.
Oh my goodness.
That's awesome. I should be a big kid and just watch it all.
And the 2 characters I have tattooed, you actually see in my video, I show them like twice at different points.
That part cracked me up.
Hell yeah.
I know some people don't like the 80s Webby, so like when the characters turn evil, I just shove that in there as a joke. Just this, because like in the pilot of the very first episode, there's the 80s Webby as a doll, but she's like pinned to a wall with an arrow, and I'm just sitting there going,
dear Lord.
Well, that's a bit extreme.
Right. Well, it worked. It was a good like mashup for your video with this film, for sure. So that's
Appreciate
awesome.
That.
Shall we do Act 1 or Part 1 of 5?
Yes, I'm just gonna say there's just a little people.
Oh wow, there are a lot of people.
Hi, Jared.
Hey, Jared. He was there
up?
last night. There's a lot of dark and even slapstick comedy in the film. Lots of awkward laughs. Yes, there were a lot of awkward laughs.
Ooh.
What's up, fellas? From Jerry.
Yo.
Have not seen it.
There's one comment in here that's a huge spoiler up until the last act, but
okay.
We'll make sure to screen.
Oh, I just saw it. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll leave it on this. Well, okay. This is good.
What's up?
We need. Sorry. Hey Jerry from Vin.
That better.
Then, we need to see that DuckTales shit.
Straight fire.
I actually shirt.
Fire.
I know what he meant.
Either one would play, I suppose.
I'd show my tats, but like the lighting in here is just weird, and like every time I show it in my videos, one of them the head looks kind of slanted, which it isn't. Like my artist thankfully got it 100% right.
So I did want to comment on something. I was gonna kind of intervene, but I guess my mic wasn't working. So when you guys were talking about the awkward laughter earlier on, it's funny you say that because my buddy, who is my go-to movie partner, that is something he has done from day one of us watching movies. And at first, I was like, I don't understand why he's laughing at a part that's not funny whatsoever. Like, I remember I couldn't remember off the top of my head which specifically, but there was a bit of Seven when I showed him that film for the first time. And he was just laughing his butt off like it was a comedy. I was like, I don't know why you were laughing, but after a while, when I kind of realized it's more of a nervous reaction kind of a thing, I was like, okay. And once you guys were talking about it more, I'm like, I guess he's far from the only person that does it.
Oh, you're not the only one, man. I did that for like 5 minutes in the car before my buddies drove away. And is this the guy that was in your like 1-word review on your channel?
Actually, yeah, that is him.
I saw that video and I just sat there and went, "Yep."
Yeah, that's him. Shout out to Valenzuela.
Okay, so now that I think this is a great panel. By the way, we're all just
good to
having
see
a
you
good
guys.
time. So
this is really fun so far.
Good. Well, now we're gonna talk about we'll get a little bit more in depth here. So we'll let Vin take it off with the first act. I would say would be great. And I want to clarify. I feel like we should say the first act is before he gets to Nathan Lane's house. If that helps.
So everything leading up until when he gets hit by the car.
Yeah. So right to the accident.
Yes.
So the first thing that happens in this movie right off the rip is a birthing scene. It's literally him being born with all the sounds and then the smack on the ass and he starts crying. So if that's the first thing a movie starts with, you're in for the long haul. You're in for an epic. You're in for something very deep, all in. I will say the first act was probably my favorite act. It throws you right into the fire in terms of anxiety level 10, fear level 10. You're put in this city environment that's just off the wall with crime and violence and just, it's all cranked up to 11. There's so many scenes in it where it's just, the nude stabber guy, all that. There's, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. It's over the top, but it's the most, for me, it was the most impactful of the segments, if you want to break it up into 4 segments. And I was listening to another reviewer on YouTube kind of share her thoughts on the film, and she brought up a really interesting point. Has anybody seen Aronofsky's film Mother?
Yes.
So the final act of Mother is very, very similar to the first act of Beau, I feel like, where if you see Mother, it builds and it builds and it builds, and it just hits this point where it's just maximum stress and anxiety, and just you're dipping your toes into the surrealism as it gets toward the end of Mother. The difference is Aronofsky kind of builds that up, and it's like a big payoff, whereas this film, it just shoves it right into your face right in the beginning. So that could be looked at as a pro or a con. But as far as the first act leading up to when he gets hit by that, what was it? Some type of truck, right?
Yeah, I can't remember what type of truck it was.
Yeah,
I think it was like a food delivery truck or something.
The scene where he's I think someone might have mentioned it in the comments, the scene where he's taking a bath and, that stranger is up in the ceiling, kind of stuck up there. And then that sends Joaquin out into the streets naked. And he ends up, having that brief encounter with the cop who's, stressed out, anxiety level 10, tell him to put his hands up, even though Joaquin already is. And then he gets hit by the car or the truck or whatever. But I thought the comparison to the end of Mother was very, very kind of spot on in terms of the surrealism and the anxious anxiety and stress that you see in both of those films. But I do like the first act, probably my favorite act. But again, I really need to rewatch this one. I'm gonna wait till it gets a 4K or a Blu-ray though, but I'll pass it off to Tyler. But that's my brief thoughts on the first act.
Yes.
Yeah. The best thing I can say about the first act is that you have to pay laser focused attention to like the foreground and the background. Like there are so many jokes, there are so many hidden meanings that like on second viewing it pops instantly into your head. And my friend that was driving home was telling me that like in the therapist's office, apparently one of the paintings was moving or something like that, which I don't know if I would have caught that personally. I mean, chances are when I go see it again, and I probably will, because there's a coworker of mine that desperately wants to check it out, especially after I did. But with the I don't know what state this movie is supposed to take place in. I'm assuming it's like New York or something. But when he's walking down the street and there's a guy loading an AK like in the middle of the street, no questions asked or anything, I'm just sitting there going, this is a live action Simpsons scenario, and I fucking love it for that.
Yeah.
Like so many people have compared like the inside jokes and the background bits to Simpsons, but it's like 18A or X-rated. I mean, the strip joint next to his apartment that's like, I don't know, Erectus Ejectus or some crap like that. That's a quality level writing. You know, when Midsommar reviews came out and everybody pointed out how hilarious it was, I laughed at Midsommar. I wasn't like laughing out loud, but this was the kind of stuff I was expecting from him. Just juvenile, but just completely unrated. And then when he's just running to the apartment and the one homeless guy who I guess is like desperate for change chases him, I'm just sitting there going, I don't know if this is like self-defense or if you're just being a dick. Like it just presents a little bit of moral ambiguity as to whether there's a legit reason for him to be afraid, or if Beau is just so disconnected from the world. And it's a good way to start off the movie for me. And of course, there's some foreshadowing to the attic scene where there's like so much graffiti of dicks on the wall, like the one guy who literally pisses into his mouth. The second I saw that drawing, I'm just sitting there going, that's going to come back at some point. That did not come back the way I thought it was going to be, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Fun fact, Ari Aster drew that himself.
Really?
Of course
I believe it. I believe
Of course
it.
he did.
Yeah, that scene where he has to get across the street to the store to get water was a great look at his anxiety level and also the chaos in the city. You know, him having to just cross the street was a
that I can honestly say, like, I felt that kind of panic before, where I go on the internet when I know for a fact I never should, and of course it just corroborates the very thing that I'm personally afraid of. And of course there's the usual stuff that you see about anxiety in movies where everybody just is suddenly out to get you, but you don't really know why, and it just comes completely out of nowhere.
Yep. You see that in the cop, but you also see that in the store clerk where he's trying to pay for the water. And he's like, I'm going to call the cops on you. Like, pay me. And he's like, I just paid you. And he's like,
I also just want to point out, I love that the name of the corner store is literally called Cheapo Depot. Did anybody else catch that?
Mhm.
That's a good find.
See what I mean on the Simpsons stuff? This just seems like something they would shove in the background like yesterday or something.
Yeah.
It does. It kind of does.
In fact, when Beau's walking down the street and he grabs that porcelain doll that reminds him of his mother, for whatever reason, that just reminds me of the intro where Bart's like skateboarding past all of the different characters. Especially when they redid the intro and they added in like Sideshow Bob or some random cowboy with like two pistols in his hand. I don't know. I guess
Rich
he's like
Texan.
is he like a new character? Because I don't remember him at all.
Yeah, probably from like season 10 on.
That figures.
Wow, fingers.
Yeah, that's a great point about the running across to get water scene, and actually he pointed out in the theater yes, the brown recluse signs are all over the apartment building, and they're watch out for the brown recluse. And yes, Beau is a recluse, but there's that scene where he's in the tub and he sees a man like above him on the ceiling. And that's like such a great example of like how people feel with anxiety. Like everything is so much over exaggerated than like normal life.
Right. To the point of where it seems surreal.
Yes. So we can move on to Mark. Take it off there.
Yeah, so far, Vin and Tyler, you guys have great reads on that whole first section. I agree with everything you guys said. I like specifically you said there's that moral ambiguity, which they kind of circle back on in the final, I guess that would be the epilogue that you mentioned, where they kind of show those scenes, but from a different perspective of somebody who's not Beau, or who is like our POV for the whole film. And then you kind of get to like zoom out and look at these things that he does as like what they are, and without that level of attachment to it. So I like that about it. So going into this, I had heard all the stuff, all the press, Joaquin Phoenix saying not to do mushrooms on it. It's a career killer. It's an anxiety-ridden, nightmare, all this stuff. So like Hereditary really like messed me up for a while. I still haven't seen it a second time. It's like, as an adult, it's the scariest movie I've seen in my whole life. So,
damn.
And like the conditions that I saw it under play a big part of that. And then like I watched the movie, I'm like with my two friends or whatever, and we're like super locked in, and like everything happens, and then like after that we're like, all right, so you want to go out to like the bar or something? And I was like, I need to go home and like lie down. Go to the bar, and I'm like looking around at everyone, and I'm like, why are they all acting so normal? Like, don't they know what I just like? It was a meme where it's like the guy at the party, and he's like, they don't know I just watched Hereditary or something. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
it's like that meme. That's
if I'm being honest, I probably would have been one of those friends. Like Hereditary doesn't do anything for me, but
that's the thing about that movie and this movie as well, is like you can look at that scene that happens in the first act that kind of kicks off the events of the movie. And like, you can look at that and be like traumatized like I was, or you can like laugh, which I think are two perfectly normal responses. I was traumatized by it, but it's all about what you know, your own personal experience. And so going into this, I was very much on guard, and like prepared for the worst. And it wasn't as bad as I was expecting, which was good in terms of like things that, you know, like Hereditary, Midsommar have those moments in the movie where like, it's like the moment, you know, if you know what I mean, where it's like the shock, like your jaw hits the floor. There was nothing quite like that. It's kind of just like that, but like prolonged throughout a 3-hour runtime. So the first act does a really good job of like setting all that stuff up. And it's the one that's most based in like any semblance of reality. After this, and to a degree the second act as well, but like after that, it just kind of, it's like, all right, well, we're not going to try to, you know, attempt any effort at making this seem like anything that could happen in real life, which is not the way I don't think you're supposed to look at this, is like, what does that mean? Or what is that like? This is clearly like nothing that is, you know, this is heightened to, and you guys have mentioned it, this is like anxiety heightened to the point of surrealism, to where trying to assign any sort of logistical meaning to this is pointless.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the intent of the first act. So that's where that leaves us.
Oh, well said, all of you so far.
Cool POVs.
Miss Caprice.
So it's like, you know, just to mirror what everybody said, this first act was just anxiety on screen. The highest point that you could possibly get. It was anxiety, it was, you know, personal fear, it was trauma, all wrapped up into one act. In the beginning scene with the therapist, I don't know if any of you guys felt the same way, but this was probably the cringiest therapist I've ever kind of come and gone down with. He's literally sitting there smiling the whole time, and then he sits there and he straight up asks, have you ever thought about your mom being dead? Like, I kind of sat around and I kind of looked around in my seat and everyone was like,
yeah, I can speak from experience. I've had like 4 therapy sessions. That would not happen at all.
No, it wouldn't. And so the fact that Beau was kind of sitting there and he was, I think this was probably the most tranquil we see him in the movie, was when he's sitting there talking to the therapist. He's, I believe, at his calmest. This is as calm as we see him. There's no movement in the room. There's nothing odd or obscure in the room, maybe minus the paintings on the back wall, like you said, Tyler. There are some very strange paintings in the background that I didn't even notice until my second go. When Beau leaves, the therapist is very adamant about, you have to take this with water, and if you don't, you need to call me right away.
Mm-hmm.
When Beau is walking away, he's taking the pills. I don't know if anybody caught it, but it does say on the bottle, under the warning signs, it says, you know, could cause impaired vision, paranoia, and memories of John. I'm only assuming that John is his father. But it does say memories of John. And so later on, as we're going to talk about later, he starts remembering and having feelings of his father. I don't feel that anything in the streets that we're seeing is what we're actually seeing. At one point, Beau is in the middle of the street. He's in a full-blown panic, and he does a full pan street. There's nothing in the street. To me, that's what's actually in the street. All these things that you're seeing, like the AK, the naked stabber, the bald tattooed man. I feel like you're seeing what Beau is afraid of, and he has a panic disorder. Those things don't actually exist. And that's just how I'm looking at it. You're seeing the world from Beau's perspective, and he has a public anxiety, a people anxiety. And being in public That's what he sees. He's seeing the bad in everything. And so by the time he gets hit by the car, he's in a full-blown panic. He's running out into the street because he's just so flipped out that he had just gotten into a conversation about his mother, that once he's laying dead on the street and then we go into the next scene, none of that is really happening. I feel like that's because with this medication, he didn't drink any water. So now, minus his already full-blown anxieties, the medication on top of that is just causing everything to go a million times over. And so by the time this happens, you're getting the full effect of Beau's just mental illness.
Yeah, and I think that's what lends this film to be so open to interpretation and analysis, because from start to finish, it's 100% the perspective of Beau, and you can't trust his mind. So everything you're seeing is untrustworthy. Therefore, we don't know what's really happening. We don't know what's true and what's not. Whereas a lot of other films will pull you out sometimes and show you someone else's perspective. This film doesn't do that. So you're stuck trying to choose or decide on your own what's going on.
Yeah, that unreliable narrator.
Yeah. Well, lovely. I love everything you said.
Yeah, that was great.
For sure. Yeah. Frisky, you want to take a crack at it?
Yeah. So kind of bouncing off that, I'm kind of still at the place where I'm trying to figure out, I think there's kind of two ways to look at. I mean, the first segment especially is a really good place to start off on, but the movie as a whole, and I'm kind of curious to hear feedback on it, I guess. I'm kind of seeing two different ways to look at it. Part of me, how you were saying, obviously mental illness is a huge element of this film, but at the same time, I'm kind of wondering, just because of how over the top it is from literally starting frame to ending frame, I'm almost wondering if possibly we could be in a fantasy world altogether. And I guess the best way I could describe it is almost like an Eraserhead kind of thing, where that is completely our protagonist's world that he is living in. But obviously it's a fantasy world. It's not real, whatever. In fact, I even titled my Letterboxd review for this movie, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the movie, because that's kind of how it feels. It's absolutely, in a warped sense, a fantasy movie. But I don't know. I also kind of feel like, because we have so many Shutter Islands and It's a Beautiful Mind. We have so many movies where it's it's all in his head or whatever, to the point where I wonder if Ari Aster kind of took it to another extreme and kind of bounced off it and was okay, we're going to make a movie where it may seem like there's something, where he may have a warped sense of reality or whatever, and it may look that way to the average, but in hiding, this is all completely reality, but taking place in some distant, world or whatever. What do you guys kind of think about that? I don't know, because I've heard other people kind of say stuff similar.
You know what? That's kind of the output I have towards it, especially the epilogue, without giving anything away. That kind of just gave me the overall impression that was your second interpretation. That's how it kind of plays out. And it reminded me of surrealist movies that I don't like, namely from Yorgos Lanthimos, the guy who made Lobster and Killing of Sacred Deer. I can't stand his movies for one specific reason. It's just so fucking dry. Nobody is surprised by anything that happens. And for anyone who's going to say that's the point, yeah, I know. I mean, how can you miss that? But I mean, what makes a surrealist movie more identifiable for me personally, whether it's a Spike Jonze movie or something like that, is the characters that we're following feel just as confused and anxiety ridden as we are. So it's just easier to follow them along on the journey. So even if there's another character who, there are so many surrealist cliches in this movie, like when people change conversations midway through, or they speak in just different sentences altogether. You're still in Beau's perception of, what are you talking about? Are you even paying attention? And it also ties into his anxiety of, does anyone actually understand or even care about what I'm going through?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, you go ahead, Tracy.
No, I just want to throw this out there to the group too. I heard a theory today where it was saying that Beau drowns himself in the tub, and everything else is like him dying, or like the DMT that's being released into your brain and it's like your life flashing before your eyes, because of the death of his mother, and he's so overwhelmed with anxiety, and he like drowns himself in the tub. So everything else you're seeing is that. Just wanted to throw that out there to get your points of view.
I wouldn't completely not buy it, to be honest. I mean, just because it is so open for interpretation, I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, there's not really anything to prove that's not happening, I guess, you know.
Right.
So maybe but I will wrap up what I was saying with I think how you guys were saying that this was a really good setting up kind of a first act. Something that I think Ari Aster just knows how to nail so well is that he's really good at really starting his films off with a bang, but to a point where the bang isn't the height of the movie and we're underwhelmed because, I don't know, he spent so much time creating the beginning. Because if we look at the beginning of Midsummer, for example, tragic opening, and that's not even out like as terrible as the movie gets. And I feel the same way with Beau Is Afraid. A good comparison, I guess, a lot more small scaled of one, but me and my buddy Valenzuela, who I went to go see it with, he brought up how in Pulp Fiction, you know, we have our opening diner scene. And I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen, like, you know, your first time watching the movie, that's a really, I don't know, out of left field scene, but that's not anywhere near as crazy as that movie gets later down the road. Same thing with this. As crazy as it is that there's a naked stabber or whatever, that's not nearly as wild as this film gets. So it's like, yeah, he's got all bases covered when it comes to creating a good, I don't know, foundation ground for his stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have any? Oh, sorry.
I just had before I forget it. I think it's in our nature to try to, when we see movies like this, where it's like it's not like a fantasy thing. It's like there's identifiable things like in our own life, like, you know, apartments and stuff like that, modern things. When we're watching movies like that, it's in our nature to try to like make sense of them. So like similar to like Tyler said with Yorgos Lanthimos, where you do have those recognizable things, but weird things are happening to us, but everyone else is acting like it's just totally normal. That is something that I did think was there in Beau Is Afraid, and the theories that people have are another like sort of like a reaction that we have where we try to make sense of the stuff, like, oh well, this is all happening because, you know, he's dead, or it's like, you know, but it's like I feel like that can be not the best way to look at it, because then you're sort of starting to miss I don't know, it's hard to talk about, right? Because it's like I feel like that's so like, okay, well that's it then. Like we've put a bow on it. Like that's why this is happening. None of it's real, and then the rest is so much inconsequential nonsense. But it is so open to interpretation that I wouldn't fault anyone for like feeling that way. It's just it's in our nature to like try to make sense of these things.
No, that's really well said, and I agree. I thought it was just kind of like an interesting theory to think about. I could see that potentially being something, but I think there is a lot more to it than just that. Did you have any thoughts on the first act that we didn't cover?
I feel like this alternate reality that it takes place in my opinion, is punctuated by that MW logo from his mom everywhere and everything. It's even on the poster right next to A24. I'm like, what kind of meta world are we living in? And I just feel like the beginning was like a video game, and it just takes it really out of the real world and just makes it feel like this is okay. It's not. We're not even in our original Earth, but can't even trust him after a while.
It seems like we might be for a second there, but then we quickly are shown like, no, this is something else.
Yeah, I'm like, something's off. But dark.
That's it. It's like every frame, like it's just something slightly off, no matter how normal what we're being shown is like presented. It's slightly off.
And it is our first exposure to the theme of water being used throughout. You know, the need to get water for his pills is like desperation, and there's so much water in this movie that we will be talking about act by act for sure.
Totally.
And what that means in the ending and all that stuff.
Something funny when he's looking up the side effects of not having water, and it's just like obituaries. I was laughing my ass off.
Oh my god, yeah.
Yeah, like he Googles like the side effects for
Oh, that's good.
his medication out of the thing, and then it's just like people like it was nice knowing so and so.
That's like how you feel when you go into WebMD and you like
Yes,
you have
exactly.
symptoms. It's like, oh my god, you're just gonna die. Everything's
Yes,
gonna
it's the
die.
worst thing you can possibly do is like Googling your symptoms. It's like I have 6 months to live now. Yeah.
I think one more scene from the first kind of chapter that nobody touched on is probably the first, if I might be mistaken, but the first thing I can remember that happens to him that doesn't really make sense. That's kind of like, okay, what's going on, is when he's trying to sleep and his neighbors keep on telling him to turn the music down.
Yes, great.
Oh yeah, that's kind of when it really starts.
And they slip the note under the door and it slides all the way to his bed. I mean, that's the first part where you're like, all right, okay, let's go.
Well, so what was your interpretation of that, Vin? Did you feel like he's paranoid that they're gonna think it's him making the
Pretty
noise?
much, just another example of him being anxious.
Yeah, just another like inconsequential thing that when you have anxiety, you like heighten these things like to such high. Yeah. Talking through this stuff really helps me to realize like what the intent was there. So I'm loving all that stuff.
Yeah, pretty much every interaction he has with anyone is just another example of somebody who is dealing with extreme anxiety and social anxiety issues. And, you know, that's why I think the first act did such a great job. Kind of, it had a purpose and it set the table, and now you're ready to go.
Yeah, like when he sees on the news that there is the naked stabber birthday guy. I feel like people with anxiety, when they hear something similar to that in their real life, they're imagining them on their doorstep. You know, like, oh, there's a person oh, that's 2 towns over. That's like right where I live. And then he looks out his window and there he is. So it's like that is another example of like, you know, stuff like that.
Biggest fears, just imagined.
Yeah, like almost to a point of not quite narcissism, but just like making it, because that's all you making it about like yourself. Like you're like, oh well, I'm gonna be killed by this person. Then you guys know what I mean? I'm special, right? Yeah, it's like this is good. This is clear. I'm next. Like I'm gonna die.
Yeah. And you can all correct me if I'm wrong. Do things start to get crazier when he's on the phone with his mom and he says he overslept and his key was stolen, and then she starts putting that like, well, you better like make the right choice, and pulling a bunch of game playing with him because she's going to visit her. Things start to like, his anxiety kicks up a lot, and I think that's really when that is a turning point.
That's when it kickstarts for sure. I think the note going under the door and the music thing is like kind of when like it's subtly beginning, but then it's like the phone call where it's like personally, that's where the anxiety really started for me, for sure.
Yeah, it just ramps up from there.
Does he take the pill without water and have to go across the street before or after the call?
I want to say that was after. Don't quote me because I've only seen it once, but
it's after.
Cool.
Okay, there we go.
I'm so glad Caprice saw this twice. Yeah, she
I will take
it.
Cool. So I guess that will move us into our second act, which is, you know, he from the end of the first act he gets stabbed, I believe, or shot, stabbed. I think.
He got stabbed and hit by a truck.
Yes.
He's all
he wakes up in this lovely suburban cozy house in a teenage girl's bed, and Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane greet him, and it's this very surreal feeling. The themes that I kind of got off of this, and then I will let everyone actually, you know, discuss it. I felt it was almost a mirror of what he thought his life could have been if it was this better version. It's still kind of controlling, but it's a little bit more of because I feel like there's that neediness that the parents have because they're dealing with grief, with the death of their son, And they latch on to his best friend that they invited in from the military. They kind of neglect the sister, and they just give her pills to prescribe her. But then they latch onto Beau, and I feel like that is still that kind of like neediness mom game that he's used to a little bit, and also making him feel bad for things that he's like, I'm not even trying to like make you feel bad. It's like, things like that. I'm not, it's like almost like a projecting Munchausen's type of weird, surreal thing. It feels off the whole time. I love seeing both Amy Ryan and Nathan Lane. I thought they were spectacular. Absolutely. And also, before we move on, I just want to go through like a little bit more of the chat because I don't want to neglect these people. And it's not like a huge chat, which is great because I was kind of hoping that, because I thought the conversation will be better as a replay for a lot of people once they see the film. We were right here. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, there we go.
Cool.
Whoops.
Kim's comment.
Kim says, have been wanting to see Everywhere All at Once. So glad Jamie Lee Curtis won the Oscar. It was a great win for her and her family legacy. I personally feel it should have gone to Angela Bassett, but to each their own, and congratulations to her.
Carrie Condon, I think. But
right.
I'm over it. I'm totally not.
Raised on Popcorn with Grant. Apparently, Ari Aster described the movie as like Jewish Lord of the Rings if the lead was a 10-year-old high on Zoloft. Yes, I heard that.
What an interesting comparison.
I heard that same comp going into it, but it was Jewish Lord of the Rings, but he's just going to his mom's house. Which when you think of the movie in those terms, it really helps you understand, like, at least in sort of the structure that he's going for. It helps it. Oddly enough, it does kind of play, which is hilarious.
Because Lord of the Rings, it's such a simple concept. It's we have to get this ring back and all that. Yeah,
and they sort of just have these interactions as they go, and it's kind
There's even a big monster towards the end.
Exactly. It's like the Balrog, but it's ball.
He might have chose the wrong drug there though, because Zoloft doesn't really get you high. It just eases your anxiety after 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, he needed some Zoloft. Yeah. He needed some.
Philosopher King, first act was the best part, in my opinion. Very funny while also being super scary. The paranoia dripped off the screen.
Great way to put it.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to like the horror comedy, it absolutely does the best of both worlds. I think like it's pretty, like, I would say tonally, the horror is more consistent in the first act from front to finish, but it's also like so ridiculous what's happening that it's hilarious.
Very funny.
I want to talk about the genre for just a quick second too, because something that I think was maybe expected of Ari was like when someone has their first debut film and it's a horror film, and you're like, okay, awesome, and it's very good. When it's received well, the immediate assumption is you're going to follow it up with another horror film, which he does. And then both of those movies make a lot of money for A24. I don't have exact stats, but I know they were both like profitable. So then it's like, okay, do you just keep making horror films? Like, are you just the horror guy? And Ari Aster is not content to just make like by the numbers. Those two first movies are by the numbers compared to this, like horror films. So I'm glad that he was able to take a swing and not be so confined to the horror genre. And it makes me wonder because now that you've gotten this out of the way, you could go do another horror movie and it would be fine, because there's that expectation that you could do literally anything else after that, which is great.
Yeah.
I think it's a really dark comedy, because I only believe in like either a comedy genre or a horror genre. So this just has elements of horror, but I think you got to pick one.
Yeah.
But that's
fantastic.
IMHO.
Yeah. I don't think it's available yet.
I don't think yet.
When is it coming out on Blu-ray? Do you guys know?
I don't even know that there's a date yet. There might be. I could be mistaken.
No, I saw an announcement, but I don't know if there's a date.
Blu-ray.com might know.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to have the longest theatrical run, so the VOD will probably come sooner rather than later. That's
true.
It's got to be by the end of the summer for sure.
Oh, I would say easily, maybe by the end of this
Oh, yeah.
month, and it could be VOD.
We have Tiana Loves Movies. Hi, Tiana. Thank you for joining us. She says, hey, everyone. Philosopher King still just in theaters. Okay. Well, he answered that for us. When that dude fell from the ceiling and he wrestled with him in the bathtub, had me dying laughing. Yeah, that was
yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the brown recluse that was like that you would see in your tub above you and be like, oh my God, you know.
Wow,
that's
highly afraid of that.
I never thought about it that way. That's an interesting read.
Yeah,
I'm getting
it's like
so much out of this, just hearing everybody's thoughts. Like, I
That's
can only come to so many conclusions on my own, but having like 6 other people's thoughts, it really helps like add to the. It takes 6, 7 people to figure out what the fuck this movie is.
Isn't that great though? Like I love that. We're not
And
just
yeah,
like, oh, let's talk about Ant-Man for the next 10 hours.
Yeah, like
you know,
it leaves.
you know?
It comes and leaves your brain after you've seen it, and it's like, all right, cool. Like I'm gonna be thinking about this movie for forever. So
since we're still kind of in a transition stage, may I ask a super quick question? I have a. So this is kind of a pitch, especially because A24, their shop seems to be competing with Criterion more than trying to work with them for some reason. But I do want to ask you guys, which of his 3 films so far do you think belong in the collection?
In the Criterion collection?
Mm-hmm.
Hereditary.
All of them?
All of them, yeah. But Hereditary is his best one for me.
I feel like Hereditary is my favorite, but for some reason, I just feel like Midsommar is more in line with that collection.
I gotta agree with it on that one. I do
That would be
Hereditary, but I think just visual wise and everything that Midsommar had going for it, I feel like it would go more for Criterion than Hereditary would. But I would prefer Hereditary.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard for me. Like when it comes to Midsommar, I think they could freaking kill it with the artwork and whatever. Only thing is that we do have that director's cut physical release. Great release, by the way. But that's the only thing I think kind of keeping it from being likely to go in. But absolutely, if they decide to surprise us one day, that would be really cool to get a Midsommar release.
Yeah, that 4K that they put out from A24 is a beautiful disc. That film looks so good on that 4K transfer.
Which one?
Midsommar.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I gotta see it.
We gotta check that out.
I can't wait.
Oh, thank you, Kim. That's very appreciated. And subscribe to everyone else here. There, except for Mark. His he filled in tonight. We were supposed to have Mika, and she went to the eye doctor today, and he asked to be on the stream a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, it's filled, and he was like, but I might need someone to come in, and he just jumped right on, and I asked him really late tonight too, and he's just been fantastic. So I'll edit the description. Everyone can subscribe to everyone here.
Still subscribe to Mika though, even though she's not here.
Yes.
Oh yes, that's true. I'll leave hers as well. Yes.
Yeah. Just because she's great. They're both great.
Oh, good idea. Yes. Sorry, that the spoiler that everyone saw in the chats is the next one, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do like 3 more, and then we're going to move on. Okay, nice panel, Tracy, Draculina, nice touch. What up, fellas?
What up,
Cal? Yeah,
Sup?
perfect. Hard copy, perfect. Tiana loves movies. There you go. LOL. Okay, so I think we should move on to Act 2. I think I already kind of said what my thoughts were on it. I didn't really go into like kind of the crazier stuff that happens with the sister and kind of being replaced, and the grief and the everything he sees there, the paint. I mean, all of that stuff. So I will let Vin take it off of his perspective of Act 2, and then we'll get into the conversation with everyone.
So Act 2, I'm not going to say too much. I want to kind of hear what you guys have to say about it, because this is where I said in the beginning of the stream, I'm teetering on that fence of where I fall, because I feel like they could have changed the end of Act 1 and had him get that call from his lawyer, and that sends him off into the 3rd act. I feel like this whole 2nd act, again, this is why I want to hear what you guys took from it. You could have taken this right out and I would have been fine with it. I didn't get a lot from this 2nd act. it was the weakest act for me. It was entertaining. You know, there's things on screen to watch. I didn't hate it, but I feel like if you removed this whole chapter and cut this film down to 2 hours and 35 minutes, it probably would have been better, in my opinion. But again, that's why I want to hear what you guys have to say. So I'm going to turn it right over to Tyler.
Well, thank you for that. I will agree that this is probably my least favorite part of it for a couple different reasons. For one, I was super excited for just the fact that fucking Nathan Lane is in a movie like this. That just seems so out of the ordinary. And like, given the reputation, even if you just know him as Timon, like this is a huge
oh my goodness,
Mouse Hunt.
such a huge change of pace there. But like, all things considered, out of all the side actors, I felt like he was the least utilized. It just seemed like he was just there. Like, he wasn't bad by any means, but I felt like the more interesting character traits were given to Amy Ryan, who was excellent, I should add. And she's like the first clue that this isn't all in his head, that there's some strings being pulled just based off of the little clues that she's giving, like not to incriminate yourself when she whispers into Beau's ear saying like, turn this channel on. And you get the sense that like whatever it is that Mona is paying this couple to do, they only go along with it because that one guy Jeeves was not enough of a replacement for their son, but they also like, they can't just toss him off to the streets. For one, like he's in dire need of circumstances, and even if they didn't care about what happened to Jeeves, if Jeeves goes off doing something stupid, like they take the fall for it. So regardless of whether they actually give a shit or not, they feel obligated to help him out. And that's kind of one of the themes I like about Beau Is Afraid altogether, is that there's that difference between like helping out, like being with your family because you love them or out of obligation, which is something that Beau struggles with consistently throughout this movie, because he doesn't want to have negative feelings about his mother. I mean, who would? But at the same time, it's inevitable. It's bound to happen. I mean, you hear your parents growing up, you hear your parents complain about your grandparents all the time, and then once you get older, that starts to rub off on you and you feel bad, but you also do know where that comes from. And that's when it comes to background details, there's less of them in this second act. But there was one thing that I noticed when he wakes up in the daughter's bed, when there are all the posters and like K-pop memorabilia that she has, one side of the wall is exclusively like solo artists. There's one that literally says one, whatever that person's name is. And then on the other side, it's like boy bands and groups like Five Town or For This and That. And I'm just going, that's like, there's a little bit of that individualist versus collectivist mentality, which, well, people are struggling a hell of a lot with that nowadays. So it was nice to see that part being touched on. But yeah, outside of the finale where the daughter is just so annoyed at being replaced over and over again, just offs herself, and the mom realizes like way too late that they should have focused on her the most. But of course, it's easier just to blame her problems on everyone else's, kind of the same way Beau kind of blames his problems on other people, that there's that chain reaction. And Beau going through the window has got to be like one of the funniest things I've seen all year. The fact that it's Joaquin doing it, especially at his age, and he's not really known as a stunt guy either. Like, he's a dedicated actor, but outside of like the taxi hitting him during Joker, like I haven't seen him do anything like that. So him like just running around in a hospital gown, meaning like his bare ass is probably just hanging out as he's running away from his dear life from a militiaman or whatever. It's some really good stuff, and it's nice to see them incorporate characters who have better and worse qualities than Beau, but they still are like going through the same problem of like grief and abandonment. And I think the purpose of this act in the movie is like just to show Beau's fear that like he doesn't want to encroach on people's territory, but he doesn't want to say no to help either. And like all the problems that come from either side of it are just, again, like dialed up as you could possibly go.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
And what a graphic way to die with that paint, by the way. You brought that up at the, oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Like visually, it's like, it made me nauseous, right?
Yeah, and a minor side note, I just love that every stunt from like drinking the paint or going through the window, or again, like the note just going from the doorway to the bedroom. Auteur does everything in one take, and I fucking love when directors do that.
Wow. Yeah.
Oh, he can direct the shit out of a movie. Like he's regardless of whether you like it or not, like on a technical level, he's unmatched right now.
Yeah,
he's an artist.
As much as I don't like Hereditary, I acknowledge that on rewatch and anticipation for Beau, there were things that I did not see the first time that actually clicked with me a lot more.
Yeah. I was going to mention earlier about Midsommar, how the whole plot of the movie is like on this tapestry somewhere where they're sleeping, where it kind of shows you how it ends with like the person in the bear being burnt, and like it has like a literal like tableau of like the events of the movie. And
are you talking about the very, very beginning of the movie with the opening shot? Or are you talking about like in that bedroom house place?
I think that it's both, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've seen it, but
it's both.
Yeah, there's the place where they're sleeping, where they have like all the like the paintings and stuff. It's all illustrated. Yeah. But Hereditary and Beau are no different. And Tyler, you picked up on a lot more than I did on my first viewing. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
I guess I'll just go right into my part since I'm already talking.
Cool.
Yeah, like again, Tyler, I really like your read on this whole section. Really thoughtful stuff. I kind of felt like, you guys ever been like sleeping over at like a friend's house or something, and you're kind of like not trying to like make yourself at home by like even just going to the bathroom. You're like afraid you might like run into someone who like actually lives there, and like
that's exactly how this feels. Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's kind of the feeling that it gave me, where like someone said not wanting to. I think that was you Tyler, not wanting to encroach on people. But when you're like in their home and it's like someone will ask you like, hey, the mom is like, hey, do you want something to eat? And you're like, no, I'm good. But inside you're like, yes, I really want some food, but I don't want to. Right. Yeah, I'm sure we've all experienced that at some point or another. So that was kind of my take on this, as well as all the stuff that was already mentioned. I feel like it all kind of serves to drive home those points. So I'll just keep it brief and keep it pushing, because that was the one takeaway I wanted to add to that.
Thank you.
No, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Caprice?
So I agree with everybody before me. I do feel like this was the weakest out of all the chapters, but I did take away some things that I do want to get your guys' thoughts on. So I completely agree. I feel like Beau is in that, I don't want to impose type of situation. Like my biggest example of that is when he walks out of the room and the daughter is sleeping on the sofa, and he's like, I could sleep in the sofa, you could be in your room, like it's no big deal. And she's like, get in the room. Like she was like, and like go. Like that to me was kind of like, okay, like this might be like a real thing. It wasn't until he gets the phone call from the attorney to where, I forget his name. I'm sorry. The soldier that they're watching over.
I think it was Jeeves.
Jeeves?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
just like a butler name.
It's a weird name for him to have to begin with. But
it was very strange. For me, Jeeves represents Beau's inner anger. You don't really see Jeeves do much of anything until Beau is getting that phone call saying, we're held up because you're not here. You're not trying hard enough to be here. And of course, anybody would get upset in that kind of situation. They would get mad, right? And that's in that moment, you see Jeeves charging at Beau, and he's, full of needles. And Nathan Lane is like, oh, he's okay. He's totally happy that you're here. Like, he does this all the time. He just needs his medication. And Beau is just like, what the fuck? Why is this guy coming at me? Are you sure he's okay? Like, is everything all right? But it's because Beau suppresses his anger so much, because Beau is a people pleaser, that this his body, he bottles up his emotions, so his anger comes in spurts. And if you notice that when, again, in the next act, I won't get too much into it, when he meets that person, the guy shows up again, and this time he's also being ultra violent and acting out. We also meet him up again in another act, where again, in another moment of possible anger, he shows up again. And so to me, Jeeves represents Beau's inner anger that he doesn't show, or he doesn't know how to show. The only part that I'm still going back and forth on is why the daughter was constantly going to his door and pounding on it. That one I can't really dissect. I can't really explain. But I feel like the mother and the father, the Nathan Lane and the wife, they, I feel like in Beau's eyes, they're kind of like the picture perfect parent. Like, it's what the stereotypical American parents, look like. They're super kind. The house is, magazine perfect. They had a soldier for a son. Like, they're what the American dream family looks like, right? But deep down inside, it's all effed up. It's all on the surface. It's not, everything underneath is all messed up, and what you're seeing is really not what you're getting. And so when she tells him, turn on this channel or stop incriminating yourself, she's trying to show him not everything is what it seems. This is not what it looks like. There's something else that you need to see. And so when he's running away from the situation, that for me was kind of like, okay, maybe this is real. This is kind of where I started to feel like maybe I was losing my shit. Like, is it medication at this point, or is this really happening? And so I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this chapter of the movie, but those are what I took from it. And that little time that we had with Nathan Lane and the family and the daughter, and I don't know if anyone else noticed it, but it was kind of one of those things where I wanted to just be like, who hurt Ari Aster?
Yeah.
Like,
he's not okay.
He has this in every single one of his movies, from Keeping Up with the Joneses up until now. He's shown a very disturbing family aesthetic, and he has a thing with people going through glass doors. It's been in every single one of his movies. Someone's busted through a door or busted through a glass door. So it must be his signature thing. But I have to agree, when Beau went through the glass door, I was kind of laughing at that point, but I wasn't laughing because he did it. I was laughing because I kind of felt like I was losing it. Like, I was at the point to where I was like, this was the moment where I was like, what the fuck is happening? The first time. The second time I was kind of like, okay, I get it now. But the first time I was just like, what in the fuck is going on? Like, and again, I was looking around my theater because I was just like, I'm not the only one who feels this way, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you guys see this too, right? Am I the nut, or are all of us just in a collective therapy session?
Yes.
It's funny. I think what Ari gets out of it is what he wants us to get out of it, which is like this level of like catharsis and like helping to process it and just getting it out. And then once it's out, it kind of just, I have to feel like this is like therapeutic for him. And we'll talk about it more at the end too. Just this like helping to process and reach that level of like catharsis.
Has anyone else seen Keeping Up with the Joneses?
Yeah,
I'm afraid to watch it. I know what it's about, and I feel like I don't need to see it. So
I was going to watch his shorts before this stream, and I didn't have a chance to, but I plan on watching at least a few of them. Vin told me they're on YouTube, so
yeah, they're all on.
They are.
Well, all of them except for the Beau short that inspired this. That
I would love
actually
to
got taken
see
off.
that. Yeah, I would love to see how that
So
That was-
some of the stuff in Beau's apartment is basically the entire short. Like when the luggage and the key go missing and the maintenance guy says you're fucked, like that's word for word from the short. And Ari Aster actually was the maintenance guy in the short. So
Oh my god.
but
Cameo.
I have seen Strange Thing About the Johnsons, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but like the subject matter itself is not the reason I didn't like it. If anything, that was maybe like the one thing it got right. I can't believe I'm saying this, but the acting was terrible outside of the dad.
Thank you.
Outside, look, the guy playing the dad who's going for the abusive part, he was good, and he was actually Beau in the short. And allegedly, if he hadn't died, it probably would have been him in this movie. But yeah, outside of him, everybody acts like they're in a soap opera, and I'm sitting there going, "This is some brutal stuff you're talking about," and like. Don't get me wrong, it's done well, but like it's the only thing that's done well. It's clear as day that this was his first time behind the director's chair.
Could that have been intentional though, to kind of juxtapose the soap opera with the crazy?
It's kind of what I thought too, to be honest.
The crazy nature of what's happening. Like maybe
that present that as well.
Yeah, I feel like that could be.
Yeah,
I don't know. I wasn't there, but I feel like that would be my first.
I will also say I think the dad's performance in that short film is the most important part to nail too. I don't think it's 100% necessary in my opinion that everyone else gave stellar performances even for a short film. But I don't know. That's kind of just me.
I mean, you have to manage your expectations somewhat. Wasn't that like his college thesis, like or something?
Yeah, and like even then, it's in my opinion really well done.
You have to work with what you got, right? I mean, I feel like
it's
fun to.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like you can't get fully satisfied, but like if that was his intent, it's not the intent I would have gone with personally. But again, like that's up to interpretation. Like there was a survivor who actually did say, "I like this short," and it's a good thing that somebody made it. And I'm just sitting there going, "Well, at least somebody said it."
As long as one person gets something out of it, yeah.
It's a perspective I never even thought about, I guess. Like it's not a story that I just feel like, because I'm sure that's there's countless I don't know, tales of that scenario happening. I'm sure there are, but because I personally never, I don't know, seen one or heard one up until I saw that short, I was like, wow, that's a lot of unheard voices that this short film spoke for, I guess.
Which I give him props for that. Just not only but being bold enough to tackle something like that is crazy.
Yeah, we're definitely going to watch it at some point. I want to definitely go through Ari's short films for sure. And just briefly before we get to Fritzky's words on this Act 2, yes, Caprice, when she says to like change the TV channel to whatever number that was, it felt like so Truman Show to me.
I was just, that's what I was just about to say. When Vin was talking about how it was very giving off mother vibes, I got a very Truman Show vibes from this entire movie. It wasn't until the very ending that it really hit me, but yes, it was very Truman Show, like watch your life on a screen type thing. But yes, and I just want to say I stand corrected that it's called The Strange Thing About the Johnsons. I'm sorry.
Strange Thing About the Johnsons.
But The Strange Thing About the Johnsons is the name of the short.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, Fritzky, will you take the final word on Act 2? Obviously, it's not the final word, but you know what I mean.
I surely will. So sounds like I might actually be in the minority here, but I actually think this was my favorite act of the three, to be 100% honest with you. I don't know. It was just at this point is where I was more, because, you know, with the first act, it's when we're starting to still get our character. We're still, you know, world building and what have you. The second act is what truly took me away. And that's where I was in the movie and I was like, okay, like now I'm in the point where I don't want to go to the bathroom at this point, even though we're nowhere near the end. This is where I was like, I was totally in it. And Also, not to mention for me, I mean, I knew even though this wasn't a straightforward horror film unlike his other two, I knew that there was no way that I was going to walk away from this movie without being somewhat disturbed, just because I'm never, I don't know, seen an Ari Aster film where I haven't been. But yeah, for me, I have to say, the daughter drinking the paint scene was like, oh my gosh, that was so horrific. That kind of messed me up. And just because the acting was so genuine during that scene. And I think it's kind of hilarious. I'm sure you guys have seen it. The meme of it holds her side by side with Sadie Sink in The Whale and says, these two should be best friends. Yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yes.
Oh
my God, yes.
That's good.
Yeah, no, but oh my gosh, just everything about this segment to me was just so perfect. And as Caprice said, I think that the scene specifically when it came to the television, that was how I was talking about earlier. I know you guys kind of touched on it a little bit, where I was like, okay, I definitely think it is a possibility that, this film is not just another, he's got, he's schizophrenic and it's all in his head and yada, yada, yada. Like, again, because I feel like it's just been done so many times. This was kind of where I was like, okay, maybe this is legitimately happening, where it's like, this is the world that Beau does live in. Obviously it's fictional, right? But it's like, as I don't know, as magic exists in the world of Harry Potter, crazy teenagers drinking paint and streets filled with naked criminals is the world of Beau Is Afraid. So I don't know, but that's just me personally. I'm also completely, open for other theories when it comes to like, maybe he is like in an insane asylum or whatever. I mean, I even heard one theory where they said could it be in the head of Joker? Because in the apartment scene when he's going to the elevator, just the graffiti all over the wall and the very one obvious shot of him in the elevator was a clear no to Joker for sure. But yeah, no, I mean,
So funny that you say that. The first time that I saw the movie, the first thing that one of the people I was with, they were like, I feel like this is where Joker starts off. Like
maybe, honestly.
But yeah, no, it's funny that you say that. That's like the third time I've heard that. So
yeah. And then, oh my gosh, there was something else I was totally gonna say. Yeah, I remember what it was. While I have the floor for a second, I did also want to throw in the fact something I kind of been thinking about. I'm really happy that Ari Aster did not, when you were talking about his one of his commonalities amongst his films is someone busting through a glass door. Well, I'm happy that he didn't make yet just another cult movie, because I feel like, I don't know, a third time I think that might have been a little too much for me. And I mean, you could, I guess, make the stretch about the civilization in the woods, but that's not like the other two. And granted, the first, when we're looking at Hereditary, yes, there is definitely also a supernatural element to it too. But it's still in that canon. And I'm happy that he didn't go for I don't know, the cult subject matter a third time, because I think that kind of would have been overkill for me personally. But yeah, no, I love the second act. Definitely my favorite of the three, personally speaking.
There is
or his mom's cult. It might be all his mom's cult with all of her coworkers and all that stuff.
Could be.
There is.
I didn't think about that till just now. So
there is head trauma in this though, which is a recurring theme, because the mom gets her head.
Oh yeah.
Which is the thing in all three movies. So I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I want to say that it is. Just like the open casket. We're jumping ahead a little bit there, but just like her decapitated body in the coffin was kind of funny to me. It's like, why would you have an open casket that doesn't have a head? Like, that
was ridiculous. Yeah.
Like, almost felt like I thought it was funny, but I was like, this is such a, he would do this, wouldn't he? Like, so that was funny.
Well, one of the themes we're going to discuss that I still am back and forth upon all the time, we're not going to get to till the fourth act. We're about to jump into the third act, but is if Beau's mother, Patti LuPone, faked her own death. So keep that in the back of your mind. I would like to actually talk about that if that's really happened or did not. But jumping into the third act, I wish I had a written screenplay of this because it's so poetic and there's so much said, and it is this narrative of this guy losing his family and searching for them and finally finding peace and reconnecting. And I don't know, that's one of the reasons why I feel like I want to rewatch the film a second time, and I'm sure Caprice, watching this, you probably got more out of that a second time. It's visually so beautiful and the cinematography is stunning, and I think I was really captivated in that. And it was one of those times in a film where you're kind of like, I'm gonna like not really analyze all of this at this moment because there's a lot going on, and I'm going to enjoy the experience of watching this in a theater. So I don't know, Max, if you have anything specific to say about this part. The third act,
Into the Woods.
Yeah, with the
Yeah, originally when she was setting up that it was like a 4-part or 5-part structure, I was thinking maybe this is the part where it's like stuck in between and it's different from all the rest because it's very dreamlike. It's like a play, different medium. But it is the third, chapter, if you will.
And I will say the only thing I really interpreted was it's kind of the way he feels his life could have been if he wasn't under his mother's control. Or like at least that freedom of feeling that. Exactly. But then he is swept away. And again, water is just this huge issue constantly. And so I'm gonna let you guys speak on this one.
Just walk about.
It is probably the most, I honestly think that should even be like an extra on a DVD, and just to kind of break like a commentary just on that scene would be amazing. Not that it's like hard to understand, but there's just so much going on. So
exposition.
Yes. Vin, would you like to discuss your thoughts?
Yeah. So let me just say, first of all, I'm so happy that this film is even in existence. The chances it takes with this animated little section here, the fact that A24 gave him $35 some odd million to make this film. God, I mean, how often? We're never going to see this again. We're never going to see it again. Maybe, hopefully we will, but somebody just saying, hey, here's a bunch of freaking money, do whatever the hell you want. And when we get so much of the same stuff these days in theaters, whether it be remakes, prequels, superhero stuff, to see something like this in theaters just makes me happy. Whether I loved it or hated it, I'm going to support it all day. And this little chapter, how it, takes this chance of totally doing something different and going in this animated route, was really, something that I think it's worth being applauded. I think this film is the film where it delves into a little bit of the themes of fatherhood. Obviously, this is all about motherhood at the end of the day, but you could take from it, does he long to someday be a father, but he feels like he never will be because he's been so oppressed, or because he has all these issues? Does he long for the bond of having a son? Is it more about him longing for the bond of his own father? So you're kind of getting some insight into that's a missing link for him that he wishes he might have had, that father-son connection, whether it's him in the father role or him in the son role. And then when he's kind of pulled out of that, and I think it's at that point where a guy comes up and says something to the effect of that, like his father might be alive or something. So then maybe again in his head, he's wondering about his father. He wants that paternal bond that he never had. But then again, like Caprice was saying, right away that guy comes and blows it all up, because that's his anger coming out because he didn't have that paternal bond. He didn't have that father, or maybe it's he'll never get a chance in his mind to be a father. And that anger comes out through Jeeves coming in there and tearing everybody up as we lead into the inevitable kind of a final act of the film. But again, only seeing it once, I don't have a hell of a lot more to say, but I do think that we're delving into the territory of fatherhood here in this little chapter.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well said.
I agree. Yep.
That's it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said also. Sorry.
Oh, no. I said, I don't know what I said.
I think he said well said, actually.
I said well said, yeah.
Yes, it was well said. Tyler, do you want to take it off from there?
I was hoping you would ask me because this is hands down like my favorite part of the entire movie. Like, I didn't watch that much of the trailer. I kept my eyes closed during a good chunk of it while just listening and kind of imagining myself like what could this movie be. But then I opened my eyes to where Joaquin is behind the animated background, and I just sat there and I went, oh shit, are they seriously going this route? I am fucking there. Like, seeing that by second bit was the reason I wanted to check this out. I am a diehard animation fan. I love it when they mix in live action and animation together. It's actually one of the reasons Mary Poppins Returns is one of my all-time favorites, because like you don't get scenes like this anymore. You don't get movies like that anymore. And the weird thing is about this particular scene is that for a movie that is so cynical and full of dread, this is the one segment that just feels whimsical and hopeful, even though it technically has this bittersweet tragedy towards it. And what Vin said about longing for either a healthy relationship with a father or to be a father himself, that rings true to home, because of one thing that we haven't actually touched on yet is the backstory surrounding his parents, where his mom claims that his dad died mid-orgasm and that it will happen to him because it's hereditary, for lack of a better word. So the first time I saw this segment, it was all of him like just sitting there thinking, if I didn't have this condition, if I didn't have like these things stacked up against me, this is what my life could have been, like Vin mentioned. But there's also something that really stuck with me based on the narrator, who I think is Patti LuPone. It's hard to tell because her voice is a lot more soft and comforting compared to where she actually is in the final chapter. But as you're just sitting there, it's technically like exposition after exposition where the narrator is just flat out saying, this will happen to you and it is completely unavoidable. But Beau is still longing for a life like this because, for starters, we all want to know where our life is going to be within the span of a few years or a few decades, whether or not it actually works out, because that way we're a lot more prepared for the negative effects. We're much more prepared to embrace the positive. It kind of reminded me of the movie Arrival, and I'm going to spoil a little bit of Arrival, where we find out that what we thought were flashbacks of Amy Adams and her daughter were actually flash forwards. She hasn't had a kid that she's going to lose to cancer yet, but she knows it's going to happen, and she's going to just accept that she only has a few years to be a mother, but she's going to love every second of it. And that was the vibe I got watching this particular segment, because it's just like, sure, like our lives aren't going to go the exact way we wanted to, but we still want to know what that path is going to be so that we have time to prepare and to just accept and embrace what we receive. And the animation, both, I thought it was just going to be like live action and stop motion mixed together, but like there's hand drawn, there's CGI, it is incorporated beautifully. Like that segment where they're swept away by the river, like my jaw was on the fucking floor. I loved every single second of this. And the animators who were hired for this, one of the influences of Beau Is Afraid is a movie that they themselves made called The Wolf House. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh yeah, La Casa Lobo.
Yeah, it's a Chilean art house movie. But I checked out like a 3 or 4 minute short they did where they literally constructed stop motion in like this office building, and like an entire set is animated within this office. There's like a kid, there are these dogs, there are these plants that sprout out into other animals, and there's no music. It's just the sound effects of the stop motion being animated, basically like paper mache. And I just sat there and went, if this is the tone that Beau is going to have, I'm fucking there. And like, I don't know how to pronounce these guys' names, Cristobal Leon and Joaquin Cochina. Hopefully I came close to saying that right. But like, these guys are real deal. Like G Kids, have them make a movie for G Kids. Like I would be there.
I'm not
if
sure.
anybody knows what I'm talking about there.
Oh yeah.
What's
Oh
G
yeah.
Kids?
G Kids is
Next Door.
It's kind of an animated version of the Criterion Channel. Like they distribute a lot of foreign films, mainly in like hand drawn or stop motion.
A lot of
Wow.
Japanese stuff. Yeah.
They do, yeah, they do Studio Ghibli curated stuff literally every year. Some of them
Satoshi Kon, yeah.
Yes, they're big into Perfect Blue and Tokyo Godfathers, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And we all know them.
Yeah, it's good to know. That's fantastic. That's a really great insight. Absolutely. And it did feel kind of like a break in the tension, I feel like, for the film at that point. And it was miraculous, and it had all of those emotions, and seeing how much of a risk Ari took with that segment. I love how you described like how you felt and everything you were seeing, and you're totally spot on. All the different types of animation were really interwoven really fantastically.
And I just want to give a shout out. I love the fact that James Gandolfini's kid is Joaquin Phoenix's son in this. That is just
oh my god, really?
I didn't know that.
Wow.
I didn't know that.
Like he's the one with like the kind of curled slick back hair that talks the most. Because
it's funny none of us had mentioned that flashback scene with him and his mother on that trip yet.
That's true.
Yeah, we sort of get glimpses of that throughout each act, so I didn't know when the best time would be to kind of talk about it.
Touch on it next.
I kind of feel like I know she's interwoven as a younger version of herself, but I feel like once we finally get to the whole mom stuff, I think then we can really talk about that, because it is like flashing back, and so I mean, unless people just want to say stuff about it, but it's such a complicated conversation. It is really specifically about that character, and I think to have that conversation fully, you can talk about her as a young mother and as an older mother and all of her psychological problems. So but Caprice, no, I'm sorry, Mark, you're next. My apologies. On Act 3.
So I don't know that this is my favorite. It might be my favorite part of the movie, this whole thing. I don't have too much to say about it, mostly just because I was so enthralled by what I was seeing that I didn't have time in the moment to kind of figure out what was happening. But I liked the way so it's Joaquin watching the play, and then it kind of seamlessly becomes we're no longer watching the play anymore. Like from his perspective, we are Joaquin watching the play, and it kind of takes over that perspective. And then towards the end, when it kind of comes back to Joaquin and the narrator is describing what's happening to Joaquin in real time, it's like the script is being read out loud, and they're describing what's happening. I felt like that was us as the audience, as like a surrogate kind of. At the same time, it's hard to articulate exactly what I mean, but hopefully that made some sort of sense. And so I felt a lot of like just like caught up in the perspective shifting there, and it was very jarring, and I need to watch it again to fully sort of process it, I guess. But I really like that part of the movie, and I love that Ari was able to do this, and he was given the money to do it.
Yep.
And you can tell he's just got so much he wants to do and say that hopefully he just continues to be able to do things like this. And movies like this are so important. I'll step out of this act for a moment and just kind of talk about, because you guys have already said very well what this act is supposed to represent in our opinion. So I'll just say that movies like this, I said the same thing about Skinamarink when that came out. Regardless of whether or not I liked it or not, I think movies like that and this are so important just because they don't fit into any specific box. People try to say, oh, that's just a horror movie, that's just a whatever. And maybe it is just a horror movie to an extent, but Skinamarink so unlike anything else that I feel like it's worth mentioning in the same breath as Beau Is Afraid, because
True.
They're made by people who want to make something. They have that need to create. And Ari Aster is very much like that. And I hope that the director of Skinamarink, Kyle Edward Ball, continues to get opportunities. Like we were saying at the start of this, how I saw a video that popped up in my feed the other day on YouTube from Possessed by Horror. I don't know if you guys know her channel, but she had something.
Yeah.
She talked about the hamster wheel of entertainment was the title of it. And I thought that was such a succinct way of putting it, because we are in this hamster wheel of entertainment. And she used all these examples of like Saw 10 and, you know, multiple entries into these franchises. And it's like, we need stuff like this. We need stuff like this, you know, to take a break. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying Marvel or Scream 6 or whatever you like, but I need palate cleansers from those things from time to time. Movies like this are it, and they're so important, and we need to keep having these, regardless of whether you enjoy them or not. They are just so important. So that's my kind of piece. I'll take this opportunity now to say that.
Does anybody know how Beau Is Afraid is performing in the box office?
Not good. It's like got like 5 million or something, which I mean is a little bit better than I thought it was going to be. But Mark, I'm glad you said palate cleanser, because my shrink, when I was describing this movie, said the exact same thing, oddly enough.
Yeah, and that's what it is, man. I mean, and then you need a palate cleanser from this after you watch it, where you watch, like, I don't know, anything else. Something that makes sense.
Something a little more happy, baby.
Yeah.
Well, especially after Beau and Skinamarink. Yeah, especially.
Yeah. And then it's like, I look at my letterbox list of the movies that I've seen this year, and you've got just so many sequels, like John Wick 4, Creed 3, Scream 6, you know, all these like franchise things. And then like, I didn't see Ant-Man, but like that's number 20.
Or even like, I mean, I did like Mario, but even Mario is tied to a franchise.
And there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but it makes me appreciate these unique visions from like auteurs so much more. And I'll always go see them, you know, just to see what I think about it. Because
when's the next time we're gonna be able to sit in a theater and watch anything remotely like this? It's gonna be a while.
You know, it's like
5-10 years maybe.
And then I know that like Ari's made money for A24. So it's like you do one for me and then you do one for them, you know. So like odds are his next movie will be very safe comparatively speaking, but he's going to continue to put his Ari spin on it, and he's going to continue to make things like this. So
he's becoming an auteur.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think he's proven that. Yeah, for sure.
Not already. Yeah.
So there's a podcast. I have it on Spotify. It's a A24 podcast. Is anybody familiar with it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I know I shared it with Tracy. There's a whole, actually, I think I shared it to my entire Instagram story, actually. But there's a whole episode with a conversation between Joaquin and Ari Aster just talking about the production of the film and everything. So if you have about an hour, I think it was like an hour and a half, maybe a little bit longer, but if you have some time to kill, if you have Spotify, or it might be available, you know, on another platform, but it was interesting hearing them talk about the film. And then also Joaquin Phoenix was on another podcast called Smartless, hosted by Jason Bateman.
Yeah.
Arrested Development.
Will Arnett. And again, they're touching a little bit more on Joaquin's history, but he touches on Beau Is Afraid as well. So there's some cool insight there if you like podcasts.
Sick.
That A24 one is really good. The Beau Is Afraid one's good. The Brendan Fraser one's good. The Everything Everywhere one is good. They've got really good shit on there.
Fantastic. I love that. Yeah, and it's great that we can all come together on, you know, a discussion like this, because I feel like most of YouTube is talking about the Marvel films and the sequels and the, you know, the Scream 6 and all that, and which is totally fine and fun. But I was just like, oh my God, like we need to get a panel for this, because this is such a fantastic conversation. I'm so glad you were all here, just to thank you all again.
Yeah. We wouldn't have been able to make sense of the movie if we hadn't done this, because like I said earlier, it goes a long way to help. Walking through it really allows us to come to these conclusions. Like I'm discovering stuff in real time, like kind of as you go.
I went to see it. I went to go see it alone at like 3 p.m, and I have no one to really talk about it to. This has made me a lot more excited than I was previously to get a hold of that physical copy and watch it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Caprice, I believe you are next, my darling.
Thank you, my darling. So I agree with what Vin said 100%. I feel like this chapter was about fathers and the importance of a father and being a father. Watching Beau watch the play and then having it turn into his story kind of showed me how badly he wanted that, but he he's so terrified of intimacy because he feels like he's gonna die from it, that he can't bring himself to do that which you need to make a family. And so when the son says, well, Dad, if you can't do that, how did you have us? That was his realization that he was never going to have that. He was never going to have that normalcy. And then when he meets the man sitting next to him and he says, you know, your father is still alive, all that stuff flashes through Beau's head. And it's kind of like, I never had that relationship with my father. What if my father wasn't as manipulative and controlling as my mother? What if he was sort of like a freedom that I wish that I had, that maybe I would be some kind of normal if he was around? And that's when Jeeves comes right through the forest and starts blasting everyone away, because I feel like Beau's inner anger came out because he never did have that. And he was never going to be able to experience that and give that to somebody else in return. And so this chapter, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there's a movie called Loving Vincent. It's about Vincent van Gogh. And it's also an animated movie. I got Loving Vincent vibes from this whole chapter so much. And I love that movie because of its animation. And I was just, the second time watching it, I was just astounded by this whole chapter. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. I was looking at everything in a different way. The animation and just the acting and the storytelling happening in front of me was just outstanding. And it was just further proof to me as to why Ari Aster is kind of like the A24 golden child right now, because damn, he took a chance with this whole experiment. That's how I'm looking at it at this chapter. This was his experimental chapter to be like, fuck what you think, you know, F what everybody else's opinion on what this is supposed to look like. This is what I want it to look like. And hopefully it comes off that way. If you like it, you don't. If you do, if you don't like it, you don't. If you like it, you're going to love it. And just the entire thing from beginning to end was just so beautifully done. And even up until the scene where, Jeeves comes through, you're just looking at this, and at this point you just want to cry, because you just feel so much for Beau at this point, to where we've been with him for so long. I feel like at this point we're almost 2 hours in at this point, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
And you just feel tired. You feel exhausted. You feel worn out. You feel emotionally drained. And I feel like at the point of the movie, this is where Beau is at, because he's just got so much going on, and he's just going through the notions of, I'm just not okay. I'm not normal. I'm never going to be normal. I'm never going to know what normal feels like. I'm not going to have what other people have. And so you're just sitting there, an emotional wreck, because you're trying to interpret it, but everything around you is so, you're just looking at this beautiful scene, but it's just so melancholy at the same time. It's beautiful sadness is the way I look at it. Aww. But this whole scene, this was the chapter to where I sat in my seat, and I remember I leaned back and I just went, fuck, like really loud. And like a couple of the people behind me, the theater people watching it behind me, and they were like, right? Like, and I put my hand up, like, yeah, like, don't distract me, like, shut up. Like everybody felt it, and I think maybe out of all the chapters in this movie, I want to say this one was probably my favorite. I took the most out of this one. This one hit me the most, probably the hardest, and it really leveled everything up for me. Like, first chapter was awesome, you get to see all that. Second chapter, you lost it, and it just redeemed itself with this third one. So the way I look at it is just again, just fuck, like where, like, and at that point I'm like, it can't get any worse than this. Like, you know, like it can't get any worse. He's at his lowest point. It's not gonna get worse. Okay.
And then it does. Yes.
Part of what you were saying there makes me wonder what my experience would have been like had there been at least one other person in my theater, because I feel like in a lot of ways it was probably like a communal, like somebody mentioned a group therapy session earlier. I don't remember who, but like
it was her.
like,
Yeah.
That's probably, you know, what it would have felt like, because you're all on that same ride. And then like we're discussing, we all have different reads on it. So I don't know if I would have benefited or not from that. And then one other thing I wanted to mention before I forget that you said is how Ari got to make this, and you said, you know, like fuck what you think this movie should be or whatever, like he's doing it for him. And I think part of that comes from this feeling that I would imagine directors have, is that they don't know, nothing is guaranteed for them, you know, unless you have like a contract, like a 3-picture deal or something like that. Like he doesn't know when he's going to get to do this again. So he's just going to do it. And, you know, he's going to swing for the fences and he's going to do what he wants to do. And, you know, at least at the end of the day, he'll be able to say, I made the movie I wanted to make,
Yeah.
you know, regardless of runtime. Like that's this thing that, like, you know, people say, oh, you could have cut some time out of there. And I wouldn't disagree, but at the same time, the movie is as long as it needs to be in his eyes. So who am I to say, you know, that he's wrong? You know, I would have preferred to leave 30 minutes early for sure. But it's just what, you know, that's the undertaking that we go on when we watch these. So I just wanted to get those out before I forgot them.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you, Caprice, the Van Gogh thing was so they put out a teaser trailer initially for this film, and they only really showed that stuff. They didn't really show anything else. And I was like, oh my God, this is so Van Gogh inspired. I was like is Van Gogh in this film to a certain point? Like, is this like some surreal Van Gogh movie? Because the first teaser literally was just all of that, you know, being shown. So 100% agree with that. And your explanation of how you felt about it while watching it was really well said. And I think we definitely felt the same exact way. So, yeah. Fritzky?
Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Yeah.
Okay. So, first, I'll start by saying I should actually apologize because I'm such a screenwriter, I guess. I thought we were going into this in a 3-segmented structure. I didn't know we were talking about it in 4 parts. So I guess 2 and 3 put together, I guess technically, would make the second act. That's why I was really confused. I was like, why are we not talking about the animated sequence? And then when you started talking about it, I was like, oh, okay, that'd be why. But yeah, no. So, oh my gosh, what am I even going to say? So I think first off, when we were, I think if I'm correct, this is the most expensive A24 film to date. And when I heard that, I was like, at what point is it going to be that I'm like, this is going to beat Everything Everywhere All at Once? Because that's not a cheaply made. I mean, it's the little movie that could, but like in retrospect, I was like, let's see when it beats that. And we see the art design of, you know, of the graffiti in the hallway of his apartment in the beginning. I'm like, okay, that's pretty good. Second act comes along. I'm like, all right, there's definitely like the house was quite a lot to work with. And then this scene comes along. And then the fourth act, I would say also like is pretty grand scale too, especially the very end. But with this bit in particular, I was like, okay, this is why it's the most expensive. Yeah, I mean, this was the point in time where I was like, this is Ari Aster's 2001 Space Odyssey. It's legitimately, and I don't even know what to say. I mean, this is freaking high art, this segment. I feel like this specifically, this scene is everything that Ari Aster has, you know, in his career been working for up until now. And I think that I've heard a lot of people say that it's kind of terrifying that Ari Aster is only 3 feature-length movies in, and he may not even be at his peak yet. That is crazy to think about, especially because he's so young, and he's already made 3 very influential movies. I can't even fathom that. But yeah, no, when I was watching this scene, it was just nothing short of inspiring to me as a filmmaker. I know when we were watching the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, Tracy and I, and we were on Luke's channel, she heard me kind of brief about this, but I'll summarize a part in there I was talking about, specifically with The Fabelmans from last year. That just seeing these movies at the age I'm at right now, just I couldn't live in a better time when it comes to being a filmmaker. For one, it's because as we were talking about way early on when we first started talking about this segment, I don't think there's been nearly as much love for indie filmmaking since the 90s, in all honesty. I think it finally has its place again now that people are starting to get kind of burnt out on the MCU and, you know, other various franchises that are, you know, all high budget and whatnot. Well, I think people are starting to say, hey, like maybe it's the ones that are not part of a series or, you know, don't have too many sequels that are like actually the ones that have better stories. You know, and that's no dissing to, you know, the Marvels and whatever, because I mean, Spider-Verse is one of my favorite films of all time for sure. But even that being said, I don't know, just seeing something so original like this movie, and even just you look at this scene alone and you're like, wow, this is the high art of high art. One thought I had when I was watching this scene or segment was I kind of thought about something that I'm working on a Paul Thomas Anderson ranking right now. And one thing I said specifically about Phantom Thread was there's just certain movies and certain scenes where it genuinely feels like a painting come to life, right? I feel that about Mirror by Tarkovsky, Dreams by Kurosawa, and with Beau Is Afraid by Auteur, specifically the animation sequence, especially more than anything else. It really does feel like, you know, a painting, a drawing, whatever comes to life. It's just total sensory overload. Yeah, I was mind fucked like no other when I was watching this segment. Yeah, just I don't know. This is just everything as a filmmaker I'm aspiring to be. Just in the creativity, the originality, the uniqueness, and also I really want to. My goal is to make films and stories and screenplays that affect people, and they walk away from my stories feeling something, whatever that may be. I don't know. This was kind of just everything I want to do, to be honest, wrapped up in however long that segment was. What is it, like 20 minutes, maybe 15 minutes, something? What do you guys think? Something like that, I think.
It goes on
maybe maybe even longer. I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
But yeah, you know, along those lines or whatever. Yeah, this is I don't know, but I don't know. It makes me happy. I don't think there's ever been a time to get into filmmaking like there is now, for sure.
That's a great point. Like I was talking about with Skinamarink, he made that movie for like $15,000, and he made it in his he made it in his parents' house. Like,
wow,
if that's not inspiring to, you know, filmmakers, then I don't know what is. Like, you look at a Marvel movie and you're like, I don't have the resources to make that, but movies like that and things like Terrifier 2, like horror in particular is winning right now, and I would put that in this category for sure.
Thanks so much.
On top of that, I also want to quick note say that it's like with Skinamarink. Yeah, specifically when me and my friends went to go see that one, you know, how much I like that movie is a different question entertainment wise, but like when it comes to like what that film did for I don't know, the film industry, it was like the Blair Witch Project of this decade, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, there's no reason, like I don't see any real reason why, you know, someone couldn't do this, to be honest. I feel like anyone could if they really apply themselves. And the fact that Skinamarink had so much interest, especially amongst general audiences too. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic.
It was unreal. And I mean, Kyle Edward Ball did have a lot more practice than some people will give him credit for. Like, for those who don't know, he ran a YouTube channel where he basically recreated dreams and nightmares that were submitted by commenters, which is such an ingenious idea for a YouTube channel. And one thing I'm finding with the reenactments that I do on my channel, where I'm like directing myself, I'm writing out scenarios for me to recreate, I'm putting in all of these motion graphics that take for fucking ever to edit on Final Cut Pro. I mean, me running out of my house, that took so damn long, but I mean, in my opinion, it was well worth it. And I'm just sitting there going, am I actually like appreciating the craft that goes behind the scenes a hell of a lot more than I already did, just because I'm doing it? It's cheap as hell. And like in my channel trailer that I'm going to put up this weekend, I literally say it's cheap, but like it's fun, silly, and over the top. So who cares? As long as I get some satisfaction out of it. And it gives me a lot more confidence that I can at least start to make shorts of my own, which is good. My one friend who does freelance work at the Art House Theater in my town, that's actually going to be showing this in a week or two, he actually invited me to host the damn short film festival just because he and I have collaborated on like several YouTube stuff before. Like he's more of a filmmaker than I am, and he's a remarkable overachiever to the point that it is just insane. But like, if I've learned anything this year, this is the year for me to like get going, to ironically not be Beau. And a part of me thinks that a part of me thinks that I saw this movie at just the right time, where I can actually identify with what's going on and what Auteur is trying to say, because Auteur is not a conventional filmmaker by any means. He didn't grow up making Super 8 shit with his friends because dude didn't really have any friends. He became a director out of necessity in film school once he realized that just sitting at your desk writing stuff, it's not all that fun. But like, he found that moment in life where you just got to push forward. And what Mark said about you like just say fuck it because you might not get another chance, that's the mentality that I really got to hit myself with more and more every single day. And I feel like Mark's Fritz is, especially like at his age and what he's doing in school, it sounds like you've got it down pat so far.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
No pleasure. My pleasure.
No, I appreciate movies like this one and Skinamarink because it's like, not everything has to be a cheap jump scare. You know what I mean? You don't have to see gallons of blood to be terrified of something. Especially with a movie like Skinamarink. I remember when I went to go see it, it was opening night at the theater that I always go to. And this was the first time in a minute that I've been in a packed theater. And we were all side to side. Oh, I know. And we were watching this experimental horror movie, and everybody was expecting, there to be these huge jump scares. And somebody next to me had mentioned that they hadn't seen a hype like this for a movie since Paranormal Activity first came out. And, when Paranormal Activity came out, it was basically just advertised online. I don't know if you guys remember, at one point they were like, oh, vote to have it be put in your city and vote to have it in theater. Like, they were basically basing the movie off of our want and our curiosity to see it. Skinamarink was probably one of the most experimental horror movies I've seen in a minute. And I had the same feeling with Skinamarink as I did with this one, where the first go around, I was like, what the fuck just happened? Like,
how many people walked out of your theater for Skinamarink? Any? None.
That was the first time I've ever seen anyone walk out of a theater. When I went to go see Skinamarink.
Nobody walked out and nobody left when the credits ended. Everybody was kind of sitting there waiting for something else to happen. I knew it was over, and I was just sitting there trying to process what I saw, but everybody else around me was literally waiting for something to like pop out on the screen or have something happen, but it didn't. It left them open to participation. But I agree with you guys. I actually think we're going to see more of this kind of thing. I don't think this is the last time that we're going to see something like this. If we're going to get something like Skinamarink and, Beau Is Afraid, to where directors are just getting sick and tired of making remakes and reboots, and they're getting their creative juices going again, I'm all here for it. And if this is the kind of thing that we're going to get, I'm excited for the future of horror. I am, because I'm a firm believer in not having every horror movie be a jump scare, cheaply made, blood everywhere type of movie. Not all horror is like that, and it's going to open up all new viewers for it.
Yeah, and I think the kind of takeover of all of these streaming services, if anything, kind of benefits that in a sense, because it gives these movies a place to exist where they're accessible to everyone. Shudder, for example, that's a horror exclusive streaming app that's like $5.99 a month, and there is so freaking much independent horror. I've had Shudder for a couple of years now, and if you look at my Letterboxd, if you can see everything I've watched the past year or two, I've discovered so much horror on that freaking channel. That's all low budget. It's also original, and when people start to see that people are watching and enjoying these films, that's when they get the money behind them. That's when you start to get them in theaters. Whereas without these streaming services, these directors, these up and coming people might not have any platform.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. It's like we're getting to that point where it's become so saturated that there is this counterbalance that is rising up to meet it, where something has to give. It's at a certain point, and they can't all cost $35 million, because they will not keep making them if they don't make their money back. So this movie is an exception in that regard, but I do think we will continue to see stuff like this. Perhaps a little more. It has to be profitable. That's the big thing.
And on top of that, I think we're also we're on the verge of something big. I mean, looking at the stakes that Beau Is Afraid made, like not just for what Ari Aster has left to come for him in his career, but for the sake of A24, the sake of filmmaking in general. I think we're on the sake of another 2001 or another Vertigo or something coming up soon. We're just and we're not ready for it. I'll say that.
Not counting the Vertigo remake, obviously. Exactly.
No, we don't talk about that.
The Vertigo remake nobody asked for.
No, we don't talk about
I didn't
that.
know there was a Vertigo remake. Or are they making that? It hasn't happened.
Yep. Robert Downey Jr.
It hasn't happened yet, right? That's what it is.
No,
it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, just don't.
Yeah,
Like, this
they're
all
making
just-
a
Just
they're making
don't
a
count.
remake and Jump too.
Yeah.
It's that movie is coming, but you know who's not coming? Beau.
I mean, he gets to. I mean, that's a good segue into the final.
You know what? Very out of left field joke, but yes, that does kind of, I guess, bring us to. I mean, if we have any more thoughts, of course.
No, I was just gonna just real quick go through a few of these. I'm trying to not. This type of stream, I think people are more understanding if you don't show everyone's comment. Just want to say hi to Basement Blues. Thank you so much.
Hi, Tony.
Tony's the man.
Hello, Wes. Everyone saying hi to each other. I think I missed a couple, but I tried to show them while you guys were talking. Yep, Johnson's. What up? Hey, Vinicio. Thank you for joining us as always. Greets from San Francisco. Very cool.
What's up?
Very nice. So we've got some San Francisco.
Oh my gosh, the whole chat is from San Francisco.
Yeah.
Not
Very
me, I'm
nice.
Canadian.
Oh. Fillmore, cool. Everyone's saying hi. Sausalito. Did I spell that? Yeah. Small World greets.
Look at the community here, Tracy. Look what you started. It's awesome.
Oh, thanks. Everyone seems to be having a great time talking to each other and chat about where they live. Haven't seen the movie. That's fine. You just watch this when you've seen it, I would say.
It's a hard movie to spoil, like no spoiler can really equate to the experience of sitting down and watching all 3 hours of it. So
yeah.
Oh, good.
I feel like people even watch this before they go and see it. We can't prepare them for what they're about to see.
No, nothing does.
We can say some words. We can say, say what happens. but ultimately seeing it and hearing us talk about it is two totally different experiences. So
I've heard someone say that exactly. Like, and that's kind of his movies in general. Like, you could say, oh, there's this like, there's this crazy like animation sequence, but then it's like you watch it, it's like I've never seen anything even remotely like this before in my life.
Yeah. Some of the people in the comments are talking about going to see this by themselves or going with a friend. I've been going to the movies a lot more solo recently, and I've been enjoying it. But like I've been saying, I really wonder how my experience would have benefited from having like somebody there to kind of bounce off of. Because as it was just kind of like me just being anxious in a theater at midnight, 1 a.m. So
yeah, we got to see it at the Alamo Draft House, and the audience was going wild.
Oh, very nice.
Yes,
I saw this movie. Someone else said they also saw it super early in the morning too. Well, it's early in the morning for the theater. I mean, 10 a.m. is when we went to go see it. I was like, I've been looking forward to this film for so long. This is my favorite contemporary filmmaker working today. No one's going to ruin this for me. We're going earliest showing possible, so no children will ruin it for us, because I've had enough of this.
Oh, there was no kids in sight for me. So
can you imagine a 3-year-old or not a kid sitting through this 3-hour movie, like not wanting to?
Well, and I don't even mean children like small ones. I even just mean like teenagers being obnoxious, especially when it comes to like horror films for sure, because I will like put this in the canon of horror. Like, I mean, I've had countless horror movies more than any other genre be the ones that we get the talkers and such. It's like, I'm so over it.
It's like my showing of Scream 6, the worst.
God, don't
you had a bad one at Scream 6?
Was the worst theater experience I've ever had, hands down.
Oh shit,
it was terrible.
That's got to be The Conjuring 3 for me. In anticipation for a jump scare, all of a sudden a random kid, like every time we lead up the quiet moment, a jump scare is coming, this kid would just yell "Ah!" and make his friends laugh, like even though nothing happened yet. Like, oh man, I was like, ugh.
Not cool.
I'm good.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
No, that's okay. So we're going to talk about the, what we can do, just like Act 4 and the epilogue together.
Yeah,
they're so intertwined, and there's a few things that I think, the flashbacks that happen throughout the film, I think work better to be talked about now. I mean, a few things, I guess, if we want to jump straight to, it's weird. It's like, how do I begin with Parker Posey? Do I begin with the mom coming back? I would say, okay, so we get to the house where the funeral is supposed to be, and Beau's mom passed away, and he is he's late. Obviously, we all know he's late. And then the childhood friend of his shows up, which is the girl he saw on vacation with his mom, and that stirs up like a lot of what is shown throughout the movie, as far as his mom's telling him like he can't have sex ever because he'll die just like his dad. He's not even allowed to masturbate. And then at one scene, and when he's like 10, she says to him, you cannot, or no, she's like, do you like her? Do you find her attractive? And it's in this weird way where it's like she doesn't want someone else to be more important than her.
That was uncomfortable to watch.
Kind of a Norman Bates dichotomy there.
Totally. And it's almost this theme as well, as like, well, if he gets a girl pregnant, then that woman and his child will be more important than I am. And it is that weird guilt, neediness thing that is so over the top, expressed in this film. So when we see Parker Posey's character show up, which again, a lot of this, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the end of like, what actually happened? Did this happen? Did the mom really fake her own death just to put Beau, make him feel the highest amount of guilt he's ever had in his life? And is the Parker Posey segment real to you, or was that in his, kind of fantasized for himself? So the one part I would feel about the Parker Posey interaction is that it is a little too easy, that all of a sudden, she's like, oh, I remember you. And he's like, I've been waiting for you. And then she's like, well, let me come inside. And then they start, fooling around. And that felt very like artificial, like very Truman Show kind of, or like fake even, like, or in his brain. So
Set up.
I'm going to start it off there, and then we can get more into the interaction with Beau and the when, you know, Patti LuPone is going off on him, which also made him faint, by the way. I'm sure a lot of you guys read this, but like that scene, I guess he was just standing in. So it's like, if the camera, like, let's say you're Joaquin Phoenix, Patti LuPone's over there, I'm the cameraman, and you don't even have to show expression, and he fainted because she's so scary. So
She's
yeah,
something else.
yes,
She's a wild one.
She brought the horror aspect, as far as that, you know, she made him a nervous wreck, which is fantastic for this character. So yeah, let's all talk about the kind of the in between, and then just go off on what your thoughts are about things that I brought up tonight. And it's a lot, so you don't hold like 3 hours just on the end. So we're not going to go on forever tonight, I understand. But yes, Vin, we can start off with you if you'd like.
Yeah, it's just a lot to unpack, like you said. There's a lot where it asks the viewer, you know, what do you decide is real? What do you decide is in his head? The, you know, unreliable narrator, like Max mentioned earlier. Funny, my theater experience, it was mid afternoon, and it was a fairly there was only like maybe 7 or 8 other people, but I was sitting there, and it was the scene where Joaquin is having sex with the girl, and it's coming to its climax, and I was sitting in my seat with my wallet between my legs, and I had scooched out, and my wallet hit the theater floor, and I bent down to grab my wallet, and by the time I came back up, the first thing I saw on the screen was the stiff body of the girl, and I was like, no! How did I miss this pivotal moment?
That was a pivotal moment, Missy.
Literally, when the film ended and finally people started walking out, there was a guy that looked around my age that also was alone. And I was like, hey, buddy, what happened in that little moment there? Because I was so mad that I missed it. Yeah, it's a lot when he's talking to his mother there. And then, of course, we're all going to touch on it when she sends him up into the attic. And you see his twin, and you see a giant penis. So that's a question I have for you guys.
Yeah,
and we'll figure it out. At least we'll try to. Did he have a brother or not? Obviously, that penis is probably not a real thing. But
no.
did that somehow maybe represent his father? There's a lot going on at the end, but I do like the end. Maybe that's what you were referring to as kind of the epilogue, where he's kind of brought to trial on that boat. Mm-hmm. And I like the end, and I like how abrupt it is when the little explosion happens, and the boat just flips, and you're just kind of left looking at the screen, and I think the water is kind of bubbling as you're led to believe he's drowning, obviously. And then the bubbles stop, and then I love how it wraps up where the credits just start to roll, and while the credits are rolling, it doesn't go to black. You're sitting there and you're watching that auditorium, or that kind of arena of people all filter out of the arena, which I think was a really cool juxtaposition of, okay, everyone's leaving, and then the theater you would have normally people also leaving. So you're kind of there at the same time. But for I said my theater was not very packed, but nobody left. Everybody sat there. Those credits were rolling for probably about 5 minutes before anybody moved. So I think that says something to the power of the film, to the nature of the film. And yeah, it's a lot to unpack. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. So pass it off to Tyler here.
That was great.
Yeah.
Well, it's a lot to unpack, but I feel like there's some stuff that's easier to grasp onto than others. Like when it comes to the flashbacks between Beau as a kid and Parker Posey as a kid, that was maybe the one thing that, just thinking about it now, was probably the lesser aspect of the movie for me, just because you don't really know what it is that these two like about each other than the fact that they're the only kids on this boat. And I'm sure the point is for Astor to like put yourself in your position. Like, what did you see in your first childhood crush? Why did it not work out? All different kinds of things along those lines. I mean, when Mona is talking to Beau in a bed, the one bed that is in the cabin, because apparently they were on the cheapest cruise line of all time. I mean, the the King Oedipus metaphors write themselves. I mean, Mona flat out says like men are blind, so that reference there was just that was probably the most hit the nail on the head metaphor in the entire movie for me. But
Very Freudian.
oh, this entire movie is Freudian, maybe to a fault, but I mean, again, that is kind of the objective. But like Mark said, seeing the open casket thing is just so absurd and morbid that you just expect nothing less from Astor. One minor thing, like when we were talking about the opening act, we didn't mention that Bill Hader was the UPS guy that picked up the phone.
Barry.
And like you can miss it because you never actually see his face. He's always filmed from behind.
Mhm.
It was such a random cameo. Like that cameo was spoiled to me before I saw the movie, but like he didn't get in the way of anything because you had to look real close just to even know that it was him.
I just knew the voice.
But yeah, when Beau finally loses his virginity, if you can even call it that, to her, like when you're not seeing her on top of him penetrating him, my initial thought as to what they were going to reveal, I think everybody can guess what I initially thought was going to happen. And truth be told, that would have made a tad bit more sense, but well, I mean, it would have been more predictable anyways. But the fact that he fucking killed her by doing the act, or at least that's the implication that I think they're trying to make, leaves this question as to whether or not Mona was lying about it in order to protect other people from him. Because, like, there's, in my opinion, I think the penis monster in the attic is just like a metaphor for the fact that maybe his dad assaulted Mona. Like that's the closest metaphor that I can come up with because I can't think of any other metaphor for what that could possibly be. And also because that monster is literally the one thing that can get in the way of Jeeves, let alone kill him. There's like the one monster that outdoes the other, and because like sexual violence would be a key component in that metaphor, and Jeeves, based on what Caprice said about it being like the only way Beau can process anger, that kind of would go a little hand in hand for me there. Like, again, that's my best approximation as to what that could possibly mean. And I think the twin brother in the basement, there are those flashbacks, the few flashbacks that I actually like where he's asking, I want to know who my dad is. And then he's locked in that attic for fucking ever, and Mona doesn't let him starve to death. Like she keeps him alive almost as a form of torture. I'm wondering if that's supposed to mean like you're looking for this information that you don't want, that your father was a monster and now you're basically trapped living with that knowledge forever. Again, that's my best approximation of that. And the rest is kind of straightforward. I mean, when Beau literally grabs the boat and sails into the cave, my friend and I thought that the movie was going to end there. And my friend was so pissed off that the movie just kept going during the arena aspect of it. And the arena thing, I think the epilogue actually ruined the movie for him because he would not shut up about it on the car ride home. And I kind of, here's why. He hates exposition a lot more than I do. And when Richard Kind, the lawyer, who I gotta say, I did not expect that great of a performance from him in such a small amount of time. If any of you know who Richard Kind is, he's generally like the loser neighbor in everything, like Mad About You or Spin City. He was the press secretary that everybody picked on. But here, like he's just scum of the earth, and he's just so good at it.
Yeah.
And my friend was going on and on about how it reveals so many things that we didn't know beforehand, that in his opinion, like revealing all the stuff at the last minute felt a little lazy. But I didn't get that vibe for one specific reason. I've had nightmares that reminded me so much of that arena. The worst nightmares are literally exposition of people beating you over the head with shit that you do not want to hear. You do not want to hear a different perspective of like mistakes that you've made in the past. And I do think that that segment was real because when the lawyer is, in my opinion anyways, coming up with some legitimate defenses or at least arguing the perspective from Beau as to why it's at least excusable or not a bad thing at all. And then Mona's business people just happen to throw him onto the rock, killing him, basically because it is rigged. Like, she is judge, jury, and executioner on this. And also, I just want to point out, when Beau goes into the house before he even meets up with Parker Posey, you actually see Nathan Lane and Amy Ryan on like the I don't know, like employee poster or something like that. So you know for a fact that these guys are at least real. And my friend and I interpreted that as like Mona was paying them to like spy on him and to like manipulate him into doing all these things. Like, my main interpretation the first time I saw it was that all this stuff was happening. Mona was watching the entire time, because the reveal of the psychiatrist being in on the gag, that fucked me up hard, right? Because being in therapy, like, that's obviously a fear that your secrets are going to get let loose before you're ready for it. And like, I mentioned it to her in my last session, which I don't know why I did. She's not the kind of person that would, she's not a tough love person by any stretch, which is what's so great about her. And like, Stephen McKinley Henderson as the therapist, one of his best performances. He doesn't do that many movies, but wow, he just relished what an over-the-top character, what a great nasty villain this is. And makes me wonder if Ari Aster hates psychiatrists, because in Hereditary, Gabriel Byrne as the shrink / father was so fucking useless. I hated him every time he was on screen, and not in an intentional way. With Midsummer, a therapist is mentioned for like 2 seconds but never shows up, and then this one he's flat out evil. So that's kind of a conspiracy theory as to whether or not he has a problem with like mental health professionals to begin with. But yeah, from like the clues of her calling Beau during that session, I do think that she's been manipulating the events so that like he's put in a box, but she's also expecting Beau to like just break free regardless. And the way she rigs those scenarios, I don't think he would willingly do so anyway. So I'm kind of wondering, I'm dumping a lot of this on you guys, and this is the first time I've really shared all this information, but it's one of those things where, do you just sit back and do nothing and expect people to crawl out of their shells, or do you manipulate events behind the scenes so that someone can like grow a pair and just go out and face the world regardless?
Yeah, that's great that you touched upon that. The whole attic thing, and I think it's giving him almost, or the brother at least that we see, barely any food to survive up there after seeing who the real father is, which, you know, the brother could be, you know, Beau's other personality, or like another projection of himself. The apartment building that his mother like owns, her company owns, like everything in that apartment building is run by his mom. The frozen dinners, it's almost like keeping him captive in that attic is the same way of keeping him captive in that apartment. And it's that making sure there's all that control consistently going. Yeah. And even things like in that trial you were talking about, you know, that she's done all of this for him, but it's been such a detriment to him psychologically. And then going off on, oh, you bought me the same Christmas gift 2 years in a row, you know, God. And then he's like freaked out, you know, it's like, it's when he was like 8 years old, you know what I mean? And it's like, there's so much, I think, the second time I watch it, I really want to focus a lot more on that second child version of him that is his brother, because I feel like there's a lot more there that I would like to explore. We're going to go on to Mark now, for sure. Yeah, fantastic. You guys are just so great. Oh my God. We did like 3 parts of this.
I honestly can't tell if I messed up Fritz there, because like his eyes have been going like back and forth the entire time.
Oh no, I just have I have ADHD, so like my eyes are gonna do all kinds of weird stuff.
No, you guys are definitely helping me to understand the movie more. Like things that I acknowledged but didn't know possible theory or like solutions as to what they're there for. So you guys this has been great for that. But yeah, this part you begin and he arrives and the funeral's already happened and he missed it and they went on without him. And so I mean obviously Mariah Carey comes on and I'm like I start laughing a little bit at that because just the total absurdity of it. And her like restarting the song was hilarious.
Yes, that's the
Oh,
best
that was
part. Like, it's
so
totally
funny.
the thing a
It's
woman
super
would
funny.
do. Like, wait, we got to restart it to the perfect point. Like,
Okay,
that's
you
like
missed it.
such
You
a
didn't. It
female
didn't hit
thing.
right. It didn't hit right the first time. So we have to restart it.
Sexting.
Yes.
Yeah, and that like I have to imagine a good chunk of the budget went to that too. So
Yeah.
which is hilarious. Like I saw before the release of the movie, I saw a picture of Ari and Mariah Carey
Yes.
like standing next to each other, and I'm like, what is the fucking connection here? Like, is
Uh,
an A24 fan? I didn't even consider that she might have a film, like a song in the film, but
Yeah.
and I'm like, what song could it be? I'm like, all these thoughts running through my head. But anyway, that was great. And it felt to me a little bit like the whole thing about like him can't have sex or he dies. Like to me, that felt a little bit like maybe Ari is like trying to say that Beau had built up losing his virginity for so long in his mind that he had gone so long without like doing it that, you know, he thought like he's if it ever happened, I would just die. Like, I don't know like how I would process that ever happening because it just seems like such an impossibility to him at this stage in his life. So like that was kind of my read on that. And then I couldn't really speculate as to why she died and not him. Although then you start to think about how like she's not actually dead, and it's like based on what we've established prior, how him implicating himself for this inevitable trial that his mom seems to know is coming, but he doesn't. So that leads me to believe that she orchestrated this whole thing. She was never actually dead, and that she is actually there. And this whole thing has been her setting him up on things, intentionally trying to make him implicate himself to make himself guilty in her eyes so that she can just dump all this stuff on him at the end and point to all these different things that he did and say, like, you should have done this instead of that. And yeah, it just felt like a trap. Like he was just walking into like a trap. Like it wasn't, he was going there expecting like closure perhaps with, you know, with his dead mother and expecting one thing and getting something totally different. So him with Parker Posey perhaps could have been set up by the mom just as one more thing to kind of like, you know, trip him up on. I'm kind of talking through this in real time as I'm applying a lot of different things that you guys have said to my overall theory here. But yeah, this is the one where it all kind of comes together for me. And then you have the trial. Oh, also, how could I forget the penis monster? At that point, I was just like, dude, what is going on? But I don't know how to feel about, because when you guys say that there was his twin brother in there, I didn't piece together that was him because it didn't quite look like him to me.
Neither did I until I saw the Wikipedia thing like flat out say it.
Oh, okay. Well then, yeah, because that was not my read at all. I didn't know who that was supposed to be. I don't know if that's his dad. Is the penis monster his dad? Is the penis monster a representation of his suppressed sexuality? Like it's stuck up in the attic and that's just where it's going to stay?
Chained.
Yeah, like there's a lot of different reads on that. I don't know what, and that's what I like about it is I don't like just knowing what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, to an extent, right? Like having that explanation can be beneficial, but I do like the idea of there being multiple ways to look at it. So that's what I'm really enjoying about that in this overall conversation. So then you get to the trial. And one thing that I noticed about the trial was that you could hear very clearly what Richard Kine's character was saying. Mm-hmm. But the guy who was supposed to be, I guess it was his lawyer, he sounded like he was coming from very far away, and you couldn't quite hear what he was saying. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that was intentional because it felt kind of dreamlike in the way that when we try to talk and like do things in dreams, we can't quite put the oomph on it that we want. So that was kind of how I felt about it. Like Beau wanting to state his case, but perhaps not being brave enough to say it at the top of his lungs the way he would like to, and really assert himself the way that he ultimately does when he has that violent outburst and like chokes his mom and stuff. So that was one thing that I noticed about it. Just the fact that his lawyer or whoever was defending him was a lot quieter than the other person. And then the movie ended, and it was 1 a.m. at this point, and I saw the credits starting to roll, and I have a 25-minute drive home, and I'm like standing by the door, like waiting. I'm like, is there going to be anything? Fuck it, I'm just going to leave. Like, I didn't know if I should expect anything else following that. But yeah, that was.
Sorry.
I was kind of coming to it.
Oh, well, I just wanted to make a comment on your theory. That's such an interesting way to look at it. If the mom was this whole time setting him up, like having someone ready to steal his keys at any given moment, or having the therapist in on it the entire time, like it would make sense, especially seeing as how she was there at the trial in the end, which for some stupid reason really reminded me of that big council place in the Star Wars prequels for some reason. But what a very interesting theory.
And then it seems to me that the only people who weren't trying to set him up were the people that he meets in the woods who are putting on that play. They seem to be the only people who were not being influenced by his mother. Like, that felt like the only true sort of genuine experience that he has throughout the whole thing.
They were also prepared for like any outside intruders. Like, one of the funniest things in the movie is that guy in the butterfly suit just pulling a Glock out and running.
But it's like, you don't even question it. You're like, of course he has a gun.
It's like of course.
Speaking of which, the ladybug made me laugh my ass off. That was hilarious.
Yeah.
Now, am I wrong, or did the movie show Jeeves being killed in the woods?
He gets killed.
I can't remember.
In the attic by the penis monster.
I know he gets killed there, but I thought I remember watching it in theaters, and I thought I remember a scene where maybe he got gunned down or shot or something that happened to Jeeves in the woods, where at the end when the penis kills him, to me that was like, okay, well he had already died, so this is all letting me know none of this is real, because this guy just came back to life.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I
can't remember. So much of this movie is a blur to me. I need to rewatch it.
I'm sorry, Caprice, what were you saying?
As far as I remember, they do show him getting shot, and he does fall to the ground at the same time Beau falls to the ground, and that little thing goes off on his ankle. They don't ultimately show you what happened to him, though. They kind of leave it up to interpretation, and then all of a sudden he's in the window at the house. So they don't really show you, but he does get shot by a butterfly man. Yeah. Few times.
Yeah. So that's all I've got for that. There's a lot to unpack, like you said. It's like we just got back from vacation or something, and
There's
so much going on in this. I need to watch it again for sure.
It does make me realize that, like, the second he leaves that apartment and gets hit by the truck, he has that ankle monitor where Mona can just follow him everywhere.
Yes. That's very true. That is true.
Together. Wow.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wanted to bring it up when we were talking about the first act, or the second act, where he like wakes up and Nathan Lane's like, "Oh, that's monitoring your health, so I can like fix
it wasn't
you."
an ankle
monitor. A house arrest.
Yes,
like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
just gaslighting him into thinking it's normal. Yeah, he's just being gaslit this whole movie. That's really what's happening. Yeah, he's just being led to believe all these things are true and they're not.
I think Caprice, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Excuse me for a moment. I want to use the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Continue.
I have a very different take on this, especially the sex scene. The sex scene for me was actually a lot more sinister, and for me, that's where the actual horror aspect of this movie comes into play. Always Be My Baby is notoriously known as like a happy, song about, being in love and this and that. For this movie, I did not take it that way at all. Though the lyrics of that song, the chosen lyrics that were playing during that scene, in connection with Beau and his mother finding out right after that scene that she's right there watching, took on a totally different take for me.
Yes.
The lyrics playing, you know, she says, you know, the lyrics say, you know, you'll always be a part of me, you're part of me indefinitely. And it says, boy, don't you know you can't escape me. And all of a sudden she's there, and it's like, what? You're dead. Like, why are you there? And right after he sees her, that part happens again where it's like, you know you can't escape me, and it says, oh darling, because you'll always be my baby.
Yeah.
And so
Oh my gosh.
it was a complete show of how fucking insane this woman is and how much control she has over Beau. And I honestly feel like the scene with him and Parker Posey actually did happen. And I feel like the moment he thought that he saw his mother was the moment that Parker Posey ends up dying. Because he's just so shocked and so guilt-ridden that he just did something in his mother's bed that he never should have done. And so when Parker Posey died, to me, that was Beau's pure, unadulterated guilt and shock of what the hell is what has happened. And so when he goes up into the attic, I don't feel like that's Beau's brother. I feel like that is Beau himself, a version of himself that is locked away somewhere that he can't get out. And that character got put in the attic for speaking out against his mother.
Can I actually ask you a question real quick? Do you mean it like when you say that it is Beau in the attic, do you mean it more in a metaphorical sense or more like a doppelganger kind of a sense?
No, more as like it's a part of him, metaphorically meaning that he can't get out. It's
I see. Okay.
Locked away that he can't let out because he's tried it once before. He's tried speaking out against her before because, as you guys know, throughout this movie, you know that there's some kind of trauma between him and his mother, but they don't cover what. You don't know if it was abuse, if it was mental, if it was sexual. You don't know. You're not told. It's left to interpretation. And so when he goes up into the attic, he sees this version of himself that has tried to go against his mother at one point, but had failed miserably because he got somehow something happened. Again, we don't know. And then he finds his father. Now, my interpretation of that is just that. His father was a dick, and his father was just basically there to give him life and left. We don't know the real reason why he left. It could have been because of the controlling mother. It could have been because he didn't want a child. It could have been for a lot of different things. But the fact that when you see this monster that's been built up as his father, to have Jeeves come in through the window and start violently stabbing him in a moment of anger for Beau, that, you know, ultimately kills Jeeves. And, you know, Beau runs away from it, scared as normal, because that's Beau. Beau is afraid of everything. And so when he goes down and the mother is there saying, I did this for you, and this, and that, I got very mommy dearest vibes from it. And it was me, and I, this is what I did for you. This is what I have done for you. This is what I still do for you. And you betray me like this. And it turned into a complete turnaround for me, where I was like, this fucking woman is insane. This woman is insane. It's not Beau that's technically insane. She is driving him insane. And there was a point to where he walks in and she's in the casket. She's got no head. They show photographs of Beau when he was younger in all these pharmaceutical ads.
Yes.
And to me, from what I took from it, I believe the mother had something to do with pharmaceuticals. That's why she was so, I don't want to say so rich and powerful, but I believe she had something to do with pharma.
Yeah.
And I feel like Paul might have been a child test subject of pharma.
That could be where
Oh my gosh.
That could be where some of the Munchausen's
He is the way he
manifesting.
is because he's just so jacked up from just being on pills because he's a codependent.
His whole
Oh
life.
my gosh.
His whole life, that's all he knows. So when he walks out of that house, this is one of the points to where I laughed because I felt like I was losing it again because it all just hit me at once, like, what the fuck? And he has that weird look on his face because you know his crazy is just straight up activated. He's walking through the woods and he finds that boat. I feel like at that point he was finally just drowning. He was just drowning in all of it and he was just completely overwhelmed. And by the time he gets, all of a sudden he gets put in this arena in this spotlight where everybody is looking at him and he's just under judgment and he doesn't know why everybody's there. He doesn't know where he's at. He's in complete panic mode and all he sees is his mother and her loud, overbearing attorney pointing the finger at him saying, you did this and you did that, while his attorney is in the background so quiet you could barely hear him because Beau feels like he's not being heard and he can't be heard either. And so he's trying to scream over this person, but he can't. So ultimately that other attorney dies because he just gives up. He gives up completely. And so when the mother breaks the bar and it goes down into the water, that was her taking complete control over the situation again. And then that's when Beau, in my opinion, ultimately gives up and he just drowned and died. And
damn.
And then there we are. We're just watching it again, like, what the fuck? And I sat there for a moment, again, waiting for something else to happen, but I didn't want anything else to happen. I wanted it to end that way. I wanted it to end at the point to where he just gave up because he's not suffering anymore. He suffered this whole movie and he's gone. He's gone with no explanation, with no reason. You don't know what happened to him. But in the end, you're kind of hoping that it's over for him because this whole thing has just been an awful journey for him. Awful. It's an awful thing. And that's why I looked at it completely different than everyone else kind of thought, because as soon as I heard the lyrics to that, I'm like, this is a very random song to be in this scene. This song is so fucking old. This song is as old as I am. Like, why this one? Like, why this song? And then as soon as I saw her, it all kind of made sense. It all, for me at least, it all kind of connected and made sense. But she's a monster. She's a total, complete monster, and she drove him to that point. And that end scene just cemented all of that for me.
Yeah, that's a hell of a analysis, and I know that we're all open for interpretation as far as this is the type of film where there is no clear-cut answer. And I've only seen the film once, but I got to agree with everything you said, quite frankly. I think that song was important. I think that it demonstrated her power as a mother over him for worse. I think that in the attic, that was a representation of himself as weak and powerless. And your depiction of what the giant penis represented. And at the end, how he had no voice and he was reliving. He wanted to kill his mom in that scene, and that was his anger, but that wasn't really what he was able to do. And then the trial scene at the end, I think you nailed it all, and I'm very, very glad I was able to listen to that.
Tracy, you ought to make a highlight of everything she just said and just post that as a separate video saying Beau Is Afraid and ending explained, honestly, because holy crap, that would blow anyone's mind.
No, that's the benefit too of, I'm so happy I have someone here that saw the movie twice. That is so fantastic.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
That's
There'd be plenty of people who could see it 10 times and not figure that shit out.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, is mom being the monster? Good God.
when you said his dad is a dick, I was like, how could I be so blind? Like, obviously that is, and maybe it's not the clear-cut answer, but I mean, when you say it like that, it's like, okay.
It's definitely, like, you're right. It may not be the answer, but is it an answer? Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it works 100% when you put it that way.
It can represent his father. It can also represent this giant built-up sexual frustration.
Yes, apparently he had distended testicles.
I didn't catch some of the imagery that you caught, how you were able to tie into maybe his mother was involved in big pharma, but that's another huge part of it because she's obviously wealthy. And it would make sense that Beau's always been through therapists and maybe always been medicated, maybe when he didn't need to be. Everything that you said was just really excellent.
Just to realize this in real time, his credit card is declined at one point. So we have to assume that it's his mom has done that.
Yeah.
She's pissed he can't come, right? Is that why?
Well, I think she's intentionally sabotaging him and his efforts
to get
back to him because he's on the computer trying to book another flight, and his card's not working or something. And that totally plays. Like, I feel like this whole thing has been orchestrated by her in order to be this big grand, like, arbitration where he becomes he's on trial essentially. That's You guys have every single one of you has genuinely helped me to understand this movie so much more. So thanks for that. Because
for sure. I mean, the funny thing is when I saw the pharmaceutical ads, I did kind of have this similar thought, but I was also wondering, like, was she an advertising executive? Because I mean, that could also explain a fair bit why, I mean, for starters, everything around his apartment is just sex obsessed. Like, she could strangely come up with all these advertisements that would be taunting him with all of this information that he supposedly can't act upon or anything like that. And of course, when it comes to the advertising, I mean, the finale is literally advertising every single bad thing that he allegedly did to her without so much as her help.
My read on all the sexual stuff around where he lives is just that it's always like in front of him. He's constantly being confronted with it, but he's ultimately not able to do anything about it, or seemingly can't act on it.
That's a good one too.
Endless takes, but there's also the theory he never moved out. He never had a life in any city. That was all in his mind about, well, I can't live in a city because look how dangerous it would be. And, there's an argument to be said, well, none of that even happened. The whole first segment of the movie and second segment, none of that stuff was even anything besides in his mind.
Yeah, true.
Also, on top of that theory too, you say how he may not be able to live in a city because terrible things happen in the city, then maybe he could say, I can't live this suburban life because terrible, tragic things can happen in the nicest of places, or even in the woods, terrible things can happen in the middle of nowhere. No civilization.
I'm so glad you said that, because they do juxtapose like the city life versus the suburban stuff, and how somebody mentioned they seemingly have this perfect life, but it's really not. So it really doesn't matter where you live. That's such a great point. I'm really glad you pointed that out.
Yeah, I love that you guys brought that up too, because there is the thought that that section in the suburbs is supposed to be the American dream. But going back to the pharmaceutical thing, they are all taking pills constantly, like not happy, like they haven't actually dealt with grief at all. They're just putting band-aids on their psychological issues. Fantastic thing, and that does tie into the mom being a pharmaceutical rep potentially, or like a head of a pharmaceutical company. Or
medication is a big theme of this movie. Like Jeeves is being medicated. Obviously Beau is.
The
daughter Tony, or maybe she's not being, and she needs to be.
She's popping on the whole thing.
Like over medicated.
Yeah, the whole medication theme runs through the whole thing.
Who was it? Who was it that said that like the pill bottle might say like visions of John? Because okay, then you were probably already onto that to begin with.
I totally missed that part too.
The person that saw it twice. Yes,
I'm getting to it.
No, I would love to.
It's very quick though. You kind of have to be looking for it.
Okay, cool.
And with the mother, staging her own death is, how it's presented to us. But again, maybe that's just Beau imagining what his life would be like if she was gone and he wasn't so oppressed. And it's really just a fantasy, though,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, there's endless interpretations of this movie. And
One-
each one is as valid as the next, if you ask me.
One thing that's kind of ironic, we've been living the past 2-3 years where like literally danger was everywhere in the world and we were all cooped up. And here comes this movie saying like danger exists everywhere. Like fucking get used to it and accept it because you literally only live once.
Yeah, you can't get away from it. No, that's definitely something I think that is being said through the different location shifts. Like even he's back home and he's not even safe at home, like his childhood home. If anything, that's where he's most in danger is when he's at his childhood home.
Yes, I just want to say one more thing regarding this issue before we go to Fritzky on this. As far as the penis monster goes, I kind of feel like as a child, she tells him, your dad died when we made you, and things like that. I kind of feel like the dad probably left, or maybe it was a rape, but I kind of feel like he left. Either way, the theory kind of works. And so then I don't find her to be the most like maternal personality as a woman to begin with, but I feel like she felt like I'll keep this child because it'll be someone who loves me unconditionally, because whoever got me pregnant either left me or raped me. So and then she then kind of takes her anger out on him and wants him to be like almost a husband, because she always points out things he didn't do, which is kind of a joke with the difference between Catholic guilt and Jewish guilt, which Catholic guilt is it's the things that you did, and Jewish guilt is the things you didn't do. So it's kind of like a little bit about that as well. And I think she kind of is trying to keep him down in that Munchausen's way of him always needing her for everything, but also like controlling his life and also wanting him to step up and be better, which is incapable when you raise a man like that, So
yeah, like he was always kind of destined for failure.
Yeah, with her as a mother, absolutely.
Yeah, there was never any winning, I don't think, for Beau's situation, and I'm glad that there wasn't like a happy ending either, because I don't think that would have tonally just wouldn't have really made sense. It would have felt like a cop out.
So Fritzky, we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So I probably have the least amount to say, to be honest, about this act. But before I get into anything, because this is going to kill me if I forget to say it, one film in particular that Ari Aster said really traumatized him when he was young was Carrie, which obviously has a mother as an antagonist. And even though I do believe that she's driven by her faith to a degree, I do also think that there's a lot of possessiveness going on, a lot of control issues going on for sure. I mean, whether it be how she dresses, how long she's out of the house, the boy taking her to prom, right? Like, I feel like that's kind of how it is. In this movie, kind of honestly, I see it's a drastically different story, but we also have a very controlling and very possessive antagonistic mother. So I see the similarity. He brought up Carrie specifically when he was talking about movies that traumatized him behind the scenes of Hereditary. And I don't know, as we were talking about the motherhood thing, that immediately popped into my head. I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh my gosh. So I definitely see some ode to his influence. Anyway, so we leave the woods, we get to the mother's house. I think, okay, the lover, I don't know what it was, but her on-screen presence, I'm not going to get into spoiler territory because it's another thing you must watch blind, but if any of you guys have seen Twin Peaks: The Return, it reminds me a lot of Audrey's character, of what she means to that segment of Twin Peaks. I can't pinpoint exactly what it is. I don't know if it's because I don't know. It's hard to explain, but something about her character reminded me of Audrey in The Return. Really hard to say. I need to watch it another time before I can really. Well, I need to watch The Return and Beau Is Afraid a second time before I can really say. But something about it, from when she came on screen to when she like died, I guess, went still, whatever you want to say, because I don't know if she really died, to be honest. Like that's one thing I definitely would like to try to figure out another watch, because we brought that up and I'm like, maybe she didn't, I don't know. But anyway, that being said, let's see. Really, I think this is the act that, even though this is the most, I don't know if the most plot driven is the right word, but this is, this is definitely the segment where we have the most, I don't know, the most like hidden details and the most, I don't know, we find out, I guess, a lot about the story in this segment, more than any of the other ones, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We learn a lot about Beau outside of the flashbacks. Obviously, this is where in real time we, learned a lot more about his character, his relationship with his mother. And even then, it's still such a mystery, like, about his dad and about, what was her role when it came to like the pharmaceutical stuff and potentially like setting him up for failure throughout the movie. It's like, it's still such a mystery. We learned so much, but yet that also, I don't know, proposes so many questions. And then we get to the epilogue scene, and honestly, I kind of teased it at the beginning of the stream. The only thing that honestly keeps this from being a perfect score for me is that, personally speaking, I think the trial scene just, for some reason, to me, just pacing wise, I think it drug out a little too long. I get it. Like, I get why it's as long as it is. I don't know if you could really take away too much from that scene without affecting the story and what that scene means to the story. But I don't know, something about that scene significantly, like, dropped the pacing score for me. I think this movie, in my opinion, was perfectly paced until that scene. I was like, why does, however long that was, 5, maybe at most 10 minutes or so, it felt like, I don't know, 15 or 20 to me. But even though it wasn't, I can't explain it. Maybe it is just because it is significantly slower compared to the rest of the movie, maybe because everything happened so fast. I guess priorhand, it got us so used to a different kind of pacing, and then all of a sudden, like, it's going from to, so I don't know. But other than that, that's my only nitpick about the movie. I mean, for as long as it is, I was able to, it kept my attention, and I was able to sit still, which is not if you guys have been watching me at all during the stream, sitting still is not something I do. But somehow this movie did manage to keep me for all that time. Like, well, not somehow. It's because it's Ari Aster. He was able to keep me because he's a genius. And yeah, other than that one little nitpick I have, I think it's an amazing movie. Other than that. So that's kind of my thoughts on that act.
Well, I want to say I did not realize it was over past 11. I apologize to everyone here. I would love to hear, I don't need to personally, like, I don't have a time frame, but I respect everyone's time that's here. So if you guys want to continue talking, and we'll obviously chime in on final thoughts or whatever, like, you felt you didn't get to say. I'm just gonna pop these comments up from the chat while if you guys have any final stuff you want to say.
Music.
Not me personally. I'm ready to take a look at the chat.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Yes.
Vin, Gus, freaking Vin's wallet ruined that movie for him.
Right?
What happened?
Yeah, just talking about
Hey,
say
me.
hi to my friends here. Yeah,
Love
old and
KB.
new. I will catch the replay after I see the movie. Good. He's
Sweet.
smart. He's not seeing it
Yeah, spoilers.
I really not to toot our own horn, but I really feel like this is going to be something that people really should watch. I know it's a lot because it's 3 hours, but we're officially longer than Beau Is Afraid at this point. But
That's true.
there's some real good discussion being had here. You know, you guys have all so well spoken about this whole movie, and genuinely, it's been so pivotal for me to just wrap my friggin' head around this thing. So
A return
As
to the
have you.
womb, this person's asking. I mean, maybe if we're talking about in some sort of what's the word, being born again, why can't I think of it? Reincarnation story, then maybe, you know.
Totally.
I think
That's
you said
another-
that at the end of the
it's
movie.
another interesting read. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Also, thank you for this great discussion. This is a cool community, and you've illuminated a lot on the film. Thank you.
Yeah.
Fantastic, Zach.
Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
think
that's-
we're in a spot
Enjoy.
too.
Disregard.
Yeah, where we have a couple of different kind of up and coming directors like that are all right in their same spot in their career. With Ari Aster, with Robert Eggers is another one.
The
even
Daniels for sure.
Jordan Peele.
and they're all
Alex
putting out their
Garland is
third
another
movie, and a lot of them with their third movie they're kind of pushing a little bit, but it's going to be fun to watch them over the next 15 20 years, how they play out and whatnot.
Yeah, what they call it, elevated horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this person says
Anxiety
this
filled
was me-
mushroom.
Yeah, anxiety filled mushroom trip to me. LOL. I love Ari Aster, but this was probably my least favorite films of his. I personally think this film is ahead of its time,
True.
and I think it's one of those like in 10 years, 15 years, people are going to be like, "Oh, that was something like really epic," and like I need 10 years to digest this film to begin with.
Yeah.
And I like it.
No, we were not ready for this movie. Like at the time it came out, like we were not prepared for this. Like
During some of the press, like premieres of this, Ari Aster was sitting down with Scorsese, and they were doing like a little discussion after the movie. I watched some clips of it on YouTube, and Scorsese cited Barry Lyndon, which is this also it's also this 3-hour Stanley Kubrick film, and he mentioned how at the time people hated it, and now 15 20 years, however long, it's been longer than that, but I think it's the 70s film, but people are still talking about it now. They can't get enough of it. So it's like that's what we have that's what we have to consider with movies like this, even movies that I watched 2 or 3 years ago, things can either get better or worse for people over time. How I feel about a movie leaving the theater is not how I'm going to feel about it, days, months, years down the line. So
that's it. Yeah. And also not to mention, that's kind of, it's funny, the tie that Scorsese made with Barry Lyndon. That seems to be like, unfortunately, like when it comes to Kubrick, like even with The Shining, just because Stephen King didn't like the adaptation of it, like that, I don't know, kind of influenced a lot of people's viewing of the movie too, which is kind of sad because it's like, it's now we no longer have Stanley Kubrick. And like, how he is as a guy ethically is like a whole nother story. But like as a filmmaker, like he didn't make a lot of movies, in all honesty. Not nearly as many as he, like, I mean, just look at Ari Aster, 1922, 5-6 years, and he's made 3 well-made movies. Like Sergio Leone, same thing. Like, didn't make a lot of movies, but it's like,
when he hits hard. Like Kubrick has made arguably the best sci-fi space film with 2001. He's made probably the best horror movie of all time, or at least in conversation with The Shining. Full Metal Jacket is one of the best war films. I mean, the list goes on. So, and I could see Ari, like I read something, I don't know how true it is, but he said he wants to do like this Western thing next. And I'm like,
oh my gosh, I would love that.
I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, do it. Like,
well, I mean, it's more of a modern Western / modern noir / dark comedy, but even then, like that does sound good.
That just made it better. Yes.
Modern Westerns like are so cool. Like freaking No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, like neo-noir.
Does that so well.
High Water.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, How About High Water is another good one, yeah.
You can tell Ari is not content to just make these elevated horror films. Like, dude is trying to cook, and I am here for him. Just let the man cook. Like, just let him do what he wants to do. You know, like it's so important that we just let these guys make their movies. You know,
and it's crazy to me again, like what just how young he is. Like it reminds me with Paul Thomas Anderson how he made these grand scaled films like Boogie Nights and Magnolia so young. Like it's crazy.
How old is Ari? I don't even know off the top of my head.
36.
36? Something.
And
Spielberg was like 25 when he made Jaws. Like that's something I think about when I just get depressed. I'm just like, dude, no.
and then what did he make? Was it Jurassic Park and Schindler's List he made in the same year?
In the same year.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's flipping crazy.
yeah. I can't think of anything noteworthy I did by the time I was 25. So
Is
the fact that he had made Jaws at that point is fucking nuts.
It is funny that Scorsese was like a moderator for a Q&A because like I've heard some after hours comparisons with Beau just because he's going from like point A to point B and just like fucked up scenario. And
I love after hours, dude.
one of you guys mentioned like Psycho in terms of Norman Bates. My friend, as he was ranting about this, said it was like half Psycho, half 8.5, and I just sat there and went, well, one of Ari Aster's favorite movies is 8.5. Like,
Fellini
for that.
Mm-hmm.
No, you can see, and Ari is such a big fan of Scorsese. He's cited it. He's like said like his filmography is no second to none or something to that effect. So I can only imagine how that must have felt to be sitting next to him and to hear that Scorsese had watched your movie not once but twice and quoted him as being one of the most outstanding voices in world cinema
and new world cinema. Yeah. And then I think it's I think it's the director's cut of Midsummer has a whole forward by Martin Scorsese. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. I've said this before. If I was Ari Aster sitting in that seat during that press thing, I would have fucking cried. Like my eyes out, like ugly baby cried.
I can't only imagine how it must have felt for him. I'm just so happy for him, honestly. Like, regardless of if the movie doesn't make money, I don't think Ari ever thought that this movie would make money, or A24 for that matter. So it's like once you can let go of that and just like see, your art out in the world and having it be validated by Scorsese probably trumps anything else. Like, like that I would like to think anyway.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think it has the potential for just to make the money back off on renting, streaming, and buying the physical copies. I think the 3-hour thing deters people from going, to see it in theaters. Yeah. So it could do that,
which is a tragedy because it's such an odyssey of surrealist filmmaking.
Yeah.
A24 and Blumhouse are kind of similar in that they typically their movies don't cost a lot, but they're able to make a lot back. Mm-hmm. And so that's the reason why, in my humble estimation, that A24 was able to do this and comfortably do it, knowing that they most likely would not make their money back. And it's because they are like one of the last bastions of like real filmmaking, at the risk of sounding like pretentious. Like they prioritize these things. Like, the reason movies are made is because it's a business. Like Joker is getting a Joker 2, even though it doesn't need one because the movie made $1 billion and like stuff like that. It's like, anyway, I'm sort of right.
That's something I love so much about A24 is that like even though the community has like grown and not always in a good way, like I hate like how some people like are so trendy about it. Oh, a new A24 movie. Like it's like those kind of people are kind of annoying to me. But like when it comes to the studio,
the movie, like I don't love them all. Like there's certainly misses in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. But like when it comes to like the films that they choose to distribute or whatever, like I love that they have always kind of kept their traditions / morals intact. The only slight thing I would say is when it came to the new with the X trilogy. I think if I'm not correct, that's the first time we're seeing some sequels in A24's catalog. Am I right? Well, other than that being said, even then though, each movie is drastically different, like in tone and story and what it's going for and whatever, that it's like it almost doesn't matter, because with MCU movies, for example, we could say, oh, good guy is going to win for the most part, then there's going to be this point of, oh, how are they going to come back from this one? And then they somehow do, and then we get a tease for the next movie. Fill in the blanks. That's pretty much every MCU movie ever made other than Infinity War. But yeah, that being said, it's like with you look at the X trilogy, it's like, okay, with X we have like the stories about like, you know, these people trying to shoot a porno and these crazy old people. Pearl is almost like a Wizard of Oz like prequel thing, and then with Maxine it's going to be like this glamorous Boogie Nights looking thing. It's like, okay, it makes me like excited to see Maxine, because it's like we know it's not going to be like the other two, because it can't be, because it's set later. You know, the even just the small teaser we got gave us a drastically different feel than the other two.
Yeah, no, 100%. The fact that they would willingly finance a second movie without even knowing how the first one would do, I mean, that just speaks volumes on its own. With Pearl, and
came out the same year, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I mean, how often does that happen?
Never.
Ty West.
Well, everyone, it's getting close to 11:30.
I'm sorry, we're rambling on for so long.
No, you guys
Sorry
are
about that.
fine. I love
There you
it. I don't want to cut anyone off. I just want to, people have lives. I do want to quickly say, I think I would be shocked if Patti LuPone does not get an Oscar nomination, and I would be pretty shocked if Joaquin Phoenix does not, either. I don't know if you guys are kind of thinking the same thing. I mean, it might get a few Oscar nominations besides that, but
Let's hope Ari gets nominated for director. Let's hope.
To see it.
I love that. Yeah.
I feel like cinematography and production design definitely.
Those are the most realistic, I would say. Yeah.
Or maybe best original score, because Axe and Shane did a good job.
Yeah.
His cinematography is very good too. So
we all know that A24 is getting recognized by the Oscars at least, and that's like, with Brendan Fraser last year, So Much for Everything Everywhere, and even with Moonlight a few years back, like
they
had 18 or so nominations, with like 12 being from Everything Everywhere All at Once alone. Dang. And they had more nominations than any major studio.
Pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, A24 just keep winning.
And then Disney will buy them.
No. Self-immolate if they do that. I will light myself on fire.
I will die.
Yeah.
That's a good joke.
You guys rock.
Well, everyone, any last things anyone wants to address? Otherwise, I think we'll call it a night.
Go see Beau Is Afraid once, twice, 3 times. Just go see it.
See it while it's in theaters.
Support movies like this. If you don't want to go to theaters, I understand that. Watch it on VOD, buy the Blu-ray, all that good stuff.
Yeah, and don't watch this stream until, and obviously if we're at this point and they've watched it, then they will, but it's better to go in blind, and I think we all agree with that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Go by yourself, go with people. Just go see it on the big screen. This movie needs to be seen in a theater. You need to take it all in that way. I agree with Mark 100%. Support movies like this so that we can get more of them. If we're not showing interest in them, they're not going to make them. So if you want to go ahead and see it, go ahead and see it, but see it in the theater. I'm telling you, it's going to be a different experience than seeing it at home.
Don't let this be the next Babylon.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of feels like Ari's Babylon in a way.
Yeah.
Wow. We all loved it.
Yeah. Wonderful.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. It's a great panel. Thank you to all of you. Go subscribe to these channels. They're fantastic. Clearly just fantastic perspectives on film. So knowledgeable. It was a pleasure having you guys. And Max, anything you want to say?
Oh, it's just been a pleasure being here and seeing all you wonderful people.
Yes. So thank you. We both appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It was great.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to sign off, and
Au
we'll see you guys soon.
Peace.
Peace out, guys.
Take it easy.
Bye.